Chapter 281. The cold wind blew past the bamboo forest. There seemed to be dark shadows flashing. The youngest girl beside Wenmin looked to be only about 13 years old, rather timid, glanced at that dark place. Her face slightly pale, went closer to Wenmin, pulled her clothes, softly said, big senior sister. There seems to be someone there. Wenmin and the rest were shocked, looked over together. The next moment Wenmin revealed a smile, patted that little girl's face, said, "Xiao sure." That is the mountain breeze blowing the bamboos, the shadows of the bamboo branches swaying. Every night it is like this. You had just come up the mountain not long ago. After a period of time you will know. The girl called Xiao Sure heaved a sigh of relief, but she was still a little afraid. She seemed to have thought of something, and suddenly turned around to look at the back of the mountain, and said, "Big senior sister, there is not a single person around the full moon platform at the back of the mountain. There are these eerie things everywhere. If we leave senior sister Sweki alone there, will she be afraid?" Wenmin's face dimmed, sighed and said, "It is sect head teacher uncle who wants your Sweki senior sister to reflect there. We also have no choice but Sweki senior sister. She should not be afraid, right?" Another girl standing behind Wenmin suddenly snorted, with indignation, said, "I really don't understand why sect head teacher uncle would treat Sweki like this. Just because she refused to agree to Funxiang Valley's marriage proposal?" Huh! In the depths of the bamboo forest, there seemed to be a soft sound, as if some small beast had stepped on a bamboo branch and snapped it. However, all the girls' attention was currently drawn to the forest, so they did not hear this sound. Only the youngest Xiao Sure seemed to be a little suspicious, but when she looked into the depths of the bamboo forest, she only saw a shadow swaying. Her face couldn't help but pale again, and she hurriedly turned her head away. Wenmin sighed, said, "Actually, that Li Sun brother is really not bad. A talented man with a good background. Most likely in the future the Funxiang Valley master position will be passed on to him, and looking at him, he also cherishes Sweki very much, but love really cannot be forced." Another girl suddenly grumbled in a low voice, "Teacher is really something. You know Sweki's temper, but why didn't you help her plead with sect master uncle?" The first lady shook her head and said, "I don't think it is right. Sweki is originally the most obedient to teacher and is also very respectful to sect head teacher Uncle Daoxian, but this time she openly contradicted both of them on Tongtian Peak, I think." She suddenly lowered her voice and softly said, "Don't tell me Sweki already has someone in her heart." "Shut up," Wenmin suddenly said in a low voice. Everyone was shocked. Wenmin's face slightly relaxed, but her tone was still very stern, quietly said, "We must not speak carelessly about this kind of speculation. If it reaches sect head teacher uncle and teacher's ears, I'm afraid the consequences will be unthinkable." Everyone was silent. The lady standing behind Wenmin was silent for a moment, quietly said, "Senior sister, actually from what I see, I'm afraid what kind of people sect head teacher uncle and teacher are. How could they not think of it? This time sect leader and master intentionally agreed to Funxiang Valley's marriage proposal. I'm afraid it's because they know in Sweki's heart there is—" Wenmin abruptly turned her head and stared at her. That lady's countenance changed slightly, sighed, and did not speak further. Wenmin heard her sigh, was silent for a moment, and also could not help but sigh and said, "Lin Junior sister, actually all of our feelings are the same, Sweki and the few of us. Although we entered the sect at different times, but these 10 over years, we are already as close as sisters. No one wants to see her become like this. But I also don't know what to say. Anyway, I think teacher has always doted on Sweki the most. After all, he will not make things too difficult for her." The other female disciples nodded together. The crowd slowly walked over, discussing in low voices. Indistinctly there were sighs, gradually walking further away. The shadows of the bamboo forest swayed. Suddenly a black figure seemed to float out from the deep darkness, landed on the mountain path. It was ghostly. In this place where enemies were all around, his face was faintly pale, was silent for a long time, and then slowly turned his head and surveyed the rear mountain of small bamboo valley. Behind that stretch of bamboo forest, the moonlight as clear as frost, legend said, that was where small bamboo valley full moon platform of the Qing Yun 16 spots was located. The solitary cliff suspended in midair, other than the back half which was connected to the mountain. Most of it was suspended in the air. This night the moonlight was bright, hanging high in the sky, clear like water, like frost and snow spilled down to the mortal world, landed on this full moon platform. Although it was not as brilliant as the legendary full moon night, which could illuminate the entire small bamboo valley, but the moonlight on the full moon platform was gentle, illuminating the entire cliff as bright as day, especially the smooth rocks on the ground. Because of the different angles, reflected countless moons, it looked even more cold and beautiful. When Ghostly stepped onto the full moon platform, presented in front of him was this beautiful scenery. And in that frosty moonlight, there was a girl dressed in white like snow, with her back facing him, standing on the full moon platform in front of the cliff, gazing at the endless dark night, quietly standing. Ghostly's face was indifferent, but his eyes seemed to be shining because of the reflection of this beautiful moonlight. That figure in white, like a fairy standing in the moonlight, did not look the slightest bit of worldly feeling. As if sensing something, that figure moved. Swecky's indifferent and slightly tired voice rang out. "Senior sister, why are you all back again?" She slowly turned her head. While speaking, her voice suddenly disappeared. Swecky's usually indifferent face revealed an expression of disbelief. That man's figure quietly stood there, staring at her. "Zhang." She slightly opened her mouth before the words came out. Her voice was already low. "Xiao Fan." Ghostly stood where he was, motionless. The moonlight shone on Swecky's snow-like skin, almost transparent and flawless, adding to her soul-stirring beauty. From afar, he actually had a feeling of not daring to go near. Are you all right?" He had thousands and thousands of words in his heart, but what came out, in the end, was only these few words. Swecky stared at this man, that man standing at the intersection of the moonlight and shadows. His expression was so complicated, as if there was something tormenting him in his heart, but that figure was clearly before her. That figure which she had thought of countless times in her dreams. She slightly lowered her head, wanted to speak but stopped. After a long time, softly said, "Since you are here, why don't you come over?" Ghostly's body shook. Xiao Hui, who had been following beside him, had also disappeared. A look of hesitation flashed past his eyes. To him, it seemed that this short few steps required a lot of courage. Swecky was still standing there, silent. The mountain breeze blew over. Her white clothes gently fluttered. Stepping out, walking under the moonlight, the bamboo forest behind her rustled. The girl quietly looked up. Ghostly was standing before her. Swecky looked at him. The initial agitation and panic on her face quietly disappeared. Suddenly said, "Still remember what I said before. The next time we meet, we will be irreconcilable enemies." She looked at him, slowly said, "Why do you still want to see me?" Ghostly's lips twitched, his eyes glimmered, suddenly looked away, no longer looking at Swecky. Just when Swecky's expression gradually dimmed, the man in front of her slowly turned his head back, as if hesitating, as if struggling, finally softly said, "You seem to have lost weight." Swecky's body shook. Shock again flashed past her face, but what followed was joy. Her snow-white face, for the first time in her life, revealed a faint blush, like crystal-clear red jade, with endless tenderness and lingering shyness. Even if there was no tomorrow, even if there was still darkness ahead, but if there was warmth in the heart, maybe she would not be afraid. This beautiful and cold girl suddenly smiled, like the most beautiful lily in the night, silently smiling in the wind. Her pure white figure was that dazzling existence in the moonlight. Ghostly held his breath. Swecky suddenly spoke, word by word, "I like it very much." And then she was still smiling, her eyes gentle like lingering water ripples. The night deepened, the moon sank in the west. Standing side by side on the cliff in front of full moon platform, looking at the darkness together, the mountain breeze blew. Their clothes fluttered at the same time, their figures in the clear moonlight. Gentle was the feeling of the wind blowing on their faces. In the boundless and dark sky, there were still drops of starlight, quietly twinkling. "Funxiang Valley people proposed marriage to you?" After a long silence, Swecky calmly said, "Yes, Master and Sect Head Sherwa both agreed." Ghost Lee's voice did not seem to have any change. Lightly said, "On the way here, I heard your Shiji's conversation. Heard you are not willing?" Lu Sweki smiled, said, "Yes, I am not willing." Ghostly turned and looked at her. What came into his eyes was Lu Sweki's indifferent face and a trace of smile between her brows. His heart was suddenly excited, as if the excitement rose from deep in his heart. Even his body was trembling, couldn't help but blurt it out, "You come with me." Lu Sweki's body trembled, looked at him, saw Ghostly know in her eyes it was still that Zhang Xiao Danan, that persevering and persistent young man. To where? Anywhere. To the ends of the earth. A smile floated on her lips, but her eyes were faintly sparkling, as if hesitating, but after a moment, she still softly said, "Then Bai Yao?" Like a basin of cold water poured on his head, Ghost Lee's entire body was cold. The coldness that came from the deepest part of his heart seemed to have frozen him into ice. Water-green figure, serene smile, that beautiful figure lying on the ice platform, in a blink of an eye, had completely knocked him down. He quietly lowered his head, was silent for a long time. Then, when he raised his head again, the excitement on his face had already disappeared, replaced by coldness. Lu Sweki stared at his change, clearly felt the man in front of her, from the lingering warmth, slowly went away, hid into the cold darkness. She breathed deeply, her lips revealing a smile, but who could see the faint tears at the corner of her eyes, that soul-shaking beauty? Next time, Ghostly turned, slowly left. "When we meet again, you use a sword." He left without turning his head, like a resolute lover severing his love. The moonlight followed behind him, like a gentle hand powerlessly pulling, but ultimately could not hold his figure. He disappeared into the darkness. That was the way he came, and also the direction he left. On Lu Sweki's pale face, there was still a stiff, faint smile, her snow-like white dress fluttering in the wind, under the moonlight, until she silently shed her first tear. The tears bamboo that cover the mountains under the moonlight in such a cold night rustled. Chapter 282. Thousands of miles away, it was also the same late night. That bright moon hung high in the sky, quietly watching this mortal world. In the wilderness, there was also a person looking up at that round, cold moon. His robe with long sleeves was still in Taoist attire on his angular face. The imposing manner without anger was still indistinctly visible. The night breeze blew gently on the wilderness. The wild grass swayed between the fluttering clothes and silence. It was as if time also stood still. Just that, who could hold back time? In your trance, eventually 10 years still passed. Someone sighed. The voice light slowly drifted away in the wind. In this silence, suddenly a voice was heard from afar. With some laughter, said, "Such a beautiful scene, priest appreciating the moon alone, really in a good mood." When the voice started, it was still far away, but by the time the words were finished, it was already behind the priest. That priest inhaled deeply, turned around, under the moonlight. It was Taoist Song Song, who 10 years ago colluded with the evil faction and betrayed Qin Yun. And standing not far behind him was Ghost King's sect head Ghost King. Just that looking at him right now, although Ghost King looked normal, but his head of white hair looked much more haggard. Only in his eyes, indistinctly glinted with another blazing glint, more dazzling than usual. Taoist Song Song's eyes glanced at Ghost King's hair. His calm expression changed. Asked in astonishment, "Sect head, why is your hair?" Ghost King smiled faintly. Taoist Song Song's reaction was actually within his expectations. For a highly skilled person like him, even after 100 years, his appearance would not change much, but this time suddenly his hair turned white in 3 days. Like Song Song and the others who did not know the inside story were naturally shocked, thought that he had encountered some problems in his cultivation. Ghost King did not explain. Even his expression did not change much, only smiled and said, "Although you and I are both cultivators, but after all we are also mortals, gratitude and grudges, feelings and enmity, there will always be sad matters." Taoist Song Song's expression turned serious, solemnly said, "That's right, I have said too much." Ghost King shook his head and smiled, clasped his hands behind and walked to Taoist Song Song, smiled and said, "Let's not talk about it." But ever since the Qing Yin battle 10 years ago, I heard that priest has been worshipped by Wandu clan, highly revered. I wonder what urgent matter is there to suddenly ask me to meet here tonight? If this matter is known by that senior god of poison, I naturally don't care, but I'm afraid it will be very inconvenient for you. Taoist Vas Kalo watched Ghost King for a long time. Ghost King did not ask much, still maintaining a smile, smiled and waited. After a while, Song Song sighed and said, "Sovereign, you are indeed extraordinary. To tell you the truth, I have an important matter to discuss with Sovereign tonight." Ghost King said, "Please speak." Song Song glanced at the Ghost King and said, "Sect leader, do you know that the Wandu clan sect leader, god of poison, has passed away 3 days ago?" Taoist Song Song's voice was not loud, but it was like a sudden clap of thunder. Even with Ghost King's composure, his body shook, his countenance changed greatly. He blurted out, "What?" Song Song stared intently at Ghost King and said, "God of Poison had already passed away 3 days ago. After his death, he left behind an order to pass the position of sect leader to his youngest disciple Qin Huiyin." Ghost King gradually calmed down, but his brows were still tightly knitted. His face was calm, but in his heart it was like thousands of troops and horses were surging over at the same time, all kinds of thoughts surging incessantly. Currently the evil sect's 3 main branches were in confrontation. The one he feared the most was this Wandu clan old poisonous thing. As long as he was around, Ghost King's sect almost had no chance to pull Wandu clan down from the evil sect's #1 branch position. But now, this old poisonous thing who once looked like he would never die, actually died so quietly. Ghost King inhaled deeply. His eyes returned to Taoist Song Song's face, suddenly smiled and said, "God of Poison Senior was our holy sect highly respected senior. This time he has passed away unfortunately. It really makes one sad." His mouth was speaking words of condolence, but there was not the slightest sadness in his smile. And Taoist Song Song, who was standing opposite him, also looked indifferent. Obviously, these 2 people did not have any nostalgia for that old man who had passed away. But Ghost King seemed to reveal a trace of cautiousness, said, "Before I came, why did I not hear of this news?" In these 3 days, although Wandu clan was very peaceful, but there was no news leaked out at all. Taoist Song Song smiled, with slight disdain said, "After the old man died, although Qin Huiyin was ordered to take over the position of sect leader, but the other few disciples who rushed back to send him off were not willing to let it go, quarreled incessantly over this position and temporarily suppressed the news of the old man's death. Now, other than myself and a few of the elders, most of the Wandu clan disciples still do not know about this." What kind of person was Ghost King? Once he heard it, he understood immediately. A trace of smile surfaced on his lips. After a moment of hesitation, spoke to Taoist Song Song. "This is no small matter, priest telling me about it. It is enough to show your great kindness. I am extremely grateful." Taoist Song Song smiled and said, "I dare not." Ghost King's eyes glimmered, said, "Does priest have anything else to say? There is no harm in saying it." Taoist Song Song snorted, said, "Sect head is a hero with great talent and bold vision. I will not beat around the bush. Wandu clan now no longer has a place for me. Hope Sect head will take me in on the account of our acquaintance in the past." Ghost King was stunned, said, "What is priest saying? With priest character, I can't even wait for you and have been longing for you for many years. Just that priest has always held a high position in Wandu clan and is also part of the holy sect. I dare not to rashly invite you, unless there is any change after God of Poison Senior passed away." Taoist Song Song nodded and said, "Sect head's foresight is like a torch. God of Poison is indeed not bad to me, but that Qin Huiyin has always been at odds with me. And this time the Wandu clan members are fighting for the position. The sect's highly skilled experts are all occupying their own mountains and confronting each other, from what I see. Even if there is someone who can unify the Wandu clan and sit firmly on the position, it will definitely be a huge blow to its vitality and cannot compete for even one day." Ghost King laughed loudly. His laughter was loud and clear, reverberating in the wilderness. After a moment, he kept his smile and sternly said, "Priest, don't worry. Qin Huiyin is an ignorant child and does not know priest talent. Will priest please come to my Ghost King sect and condescend to the position of priest? Everything will be done according to your heart, and there will be no worries." Taoist Song Song looked delighted, nodded and said, "Thank you, sect head." Ghost King smiled and nodded, a glint in his eyes, said, "Since Priest and I are already one family, I will take the liberty to ask Priest, among the God of Poison's disciples, who has the most hope to inherit the position of sect head?" Song Song pondered for a long time and said, "Although the sect's highly skilled experts are separated and confronting each other, but from what I see, in the end I'm afraid Qin Huiyin still has the highest chance of winning. Although this person is young, but his schemes are deep, and he is also the direct disciple of God of Poison, he cannot be belittled. Just that a few months ago he was injured by Ghostly in the Western Death Marsh. I heard that the sinister orb's evil power is extremely strange and penetrated deep into his bone marrow, and until now he has not fully recovered. That's why his few senior brothers took advantage of the situation and rose up. If not with his abilities, those few good-for-nothing senior brothers would not be his match." Ghost King was surprised, although Ghost Li's ambush of Qin Huiyin was also in the Death Marsh, but Ghostly did not reveal it to anyone. He also did not know anything about it. Now that he suddenly heard Taoist Song Song mention it, Ghostly's figure uncontrollably flashed past his mind. The glint in his eyes intensified. The intensity of his gaze, even Taoist Song Song was shocked, asked in astonishment, "Sect head, what is it?" Ghost King reacted, heaved a sigh of relief, smiled, and said, "Nothing much, just that I did not expect that this Ghostly that I have groomed has already become a great person. I am very happy." Taoist Song Song glanced at him, his expression as usual, and did not say anything, but in his heart, Zhang Xiaofan's figure 10 years ago at Qing Yun Hill Peak also appeared. Thinking of Ghost King's expression just now, couldn't help but sneer in his heart. Majestic Fox Mountain, Ghost King's sect headquarters. Descending from the sky, that magic stick glimmering with green light quietly flew back into his sleeve. Ghost Li's figure once again appeared in front of the entrance of Ghost King's sect headquarters. The few Ghost King's sect disciples guarding the entrance were startled and immediately moved aside. One after another called out, "Vice sect head." Ghostly did not say anything, expressionless, walked straight in. Xiao Hui crouched on his shoulder, as usual looking around, but after a while, it retracted its gaze. After all to it, this place was too familiar. Ghostly unhurriedly walked back to his own room, pushed open the stone door. Everything in the room was exactly the same as before he left, as if no one had touched it. He stood in the room for a long time, as if thinking about something. His expression had a rare trace of hesitation and fear. Xiao Hui jumped down from his shoulder, with 2 or 3 leaps, jumped onto the bed, minding its own business, and played. Ghostly pressed his lips tightly, suddenly sighed, as if he had made up his mind, turned and walked out, then headed towards the cold stone chamber deep inside the mountain. Along the way, he met quite a number of Ghost King's sect disciples, but to this vice sect head who had disappeared for a long time and suddenly appeared, without exception they all lowered their heads and walked away. In their eyes, it seemed that the further away from this man the better. But Ghostly clearly would not notice these people's attitude, only quietly walked forward. His room was not far from the cold stone chamber. Very soon he reached it and saw that figure standing outside. UG. A thought suddenly flashed past Ghost Li's mind. Why did it seem that every time he came to visit Bai Yao, Yuji seemed to be standing outside this stone chamber? Seemed like she really had feelings for Bai Yao. Just when he was thinking about that, Yuji seemed to have heard footsteps, looked up, and seemed not expecting Ghostly to suddenly appear. Her body shook slightly. Ghostly silently nodded to her, considered as a greeting, and then walked past her, towards the cold stone chamber's door. Under the black veil, Yuji was silent. Just when Ghostly was about to push open the door, he suddenly stopped, turned and looked at Yuji, said, He rarely spoke to Yuji. Right now, suddenly he did not know how to address Yuji. Yuji indifferently said, "Whatever Bai Yao calls me, you should also call me that." Ghostly was silent, as if something was stirred up in his heart. Both of them were silent for a moment, but eventually it was Ghostly who spoke. "Aunt Yu, the last time when I left, I asked Qinglong Holy Envoy to send the great shaman's ashes back to southern border." Yuji's black veil nodded twice, quietly said, "Don't worry, Big Brother has already sent it, but for some reason, until now there is still no news from him." While speaking, although Yuji's expression could not be seen, but her voice still revealed a trace of rare anxiety. Recently, the demon beasts are wreaking havoc in the southern border. Big Brother, although he is highly skilled, but for some reason, he is still not back. Ghostly frowned, was silent for a moment, said, "Don't worry too. Qinglong Holy Envoy is highly skilled. Those demon beasts cannot do anything to him." He paused, said, "Then I will go in." Yuji silently nodded, did not speak again. Rumble, the heavy stone door, emitted a deep sound, opened and closed behind him. Ghostly once again found himself in the cold stone chamber, quietly watching that serene and beautiful figure. Wisps of white air gently floated up from the ice, strand by strand drifted in the air, slowly moving, giving one an indistinct feeling of unreality. On the smooth ground, the remnants of that soul-stirring, soul-summoning guide could still be seen. The faint red color, right now, seemed to have quietly blended into the stone. Ghostly's lips, for some reason, started to tremble. Slowly, he walked over step by step, stepping over the traces of red, passing through the faint white smoke. Bai Yao's serene face appeared before him. As if nothing had changed, looking at her like this, she was still 10 years ago, that beautiful young lady whom he had first met. Ghostly's body trembled even more violently. Before Bai Yao's stone platform, he slowly bent down. In the stone chamber, indistinctly heard the choking sounds that he tried his best to suppress, but eventually could not. Suddenly, Ghost Lee's body swayed. With a backhand palm, actually heavily slapped himself. The loud sound, after the palm and face hit, immediately reverberated in the stone chamber. The man's pain and regret seemed to only be able to vent a little in this way. "Sorry, Bai Yao, sorry." That deep voice, trying its best to suppress its own voice, so quietly said, repeated. After an unknown period of time, the stone chamber, which had regained its tranquility, was once again broken. The stone door was opened. A silver-haired ghost king unhurriedly walked in, stood behind Ghostly. Ghostly, who was crouching beside Bai Yao, moved, slowly stood up, and then turned to look. The two men's eyes met. Both were startled. Ghostly saw Ghost King's head full of white hair. Ghost King instead saw the 5 finger marks slowly appearing on Ghostly's face. "You are back." Ghost King's voice sounded a little strange. In the calmness, there was a faint gratification, but there was another kind of indescribable strange feeling. Ghostly silently nodded. Ghost King was clearly used to Ghostly's character, did not mind, said, "Come with me for a while. There's an old acquaintance. I think you should meet her, and soon there will be a big event in our Ghost King sect." Ghostly was slightly surprised, clearly did not know who this so-called old acquaintance was, but looking at him, with his current state of mind, he also did not want to know, immediately turned and glanced at Bai Yao, as if to carve that pale face deeply in his eyes and never change again. Then he turned and walked out. Chapter 283. Ghost King's gaze also gently glanced at his daughter. His eyes filled with benevolence and then also retreated. When he turned around, no one could see that weakness. Yuji was still standing outside. Ghostly was waiting in front. Ghost King walked 2 steps, suddenly turned and spoke to Yuji. "You come too." Yuji nodded slightly and followed. The 3 of them left the cold stone chamber, walked through the winding tunnel, and came to a secluded house deep inside the mountain. Ghost King was the first to push the door and enter. Ghostly followed behind him into the stone chamber. There were already 2 people in the stone chamber. One of them had a black veil over his face. It was the mysterious Mr. Ghost. The other was in a Taoist robe with a square face. It was Taoist Song Song. And hearing the footsteps, Taoist Song Song and Mr. Ghost also turned and looked. When Ghostly and Taoist Song Song's eyes met, both of them were stunned. 10 years of time seemed to suddenly stop, and also like heaven's merciless joke to them. The people at the top of Qingyun Hill. And now they actually met under such circumstances. In the unseen world, who was it that was manipulating everything? The atmosphere in the room was silent. No one spoke. Ghostly and Taoist Song Song looked at each other, both expressionless, but the expressions in their eyes were so complicated. Nobody could make sense of it. Finally, it was Ghost King who walked over, smiled, and said, "Why, all of us old friends meet. It is considered rare. Sit down and talk." Once he spoke, the atmosphere became better. Ghostly and Taoist Song Song both looked away and sat down. Ghost King first spoke to Ghostly. Taoist Song Song is now our Ghost King sect's worshipper. In the future, everyone will be the same. If there is a chance, both of you should also get closer. Ghost Lee's eyes flashed, said, Isn't priest in Wandu clan? Why are you here in Ghost King sect? Taoist Song Song seemed to have expected this question. His expression did not change and did not speak. As expected, Ghost King smiled and said, Because Wandu clan has undergone a huge change. What? Great change? Once those words were spoken, not only Ghostly, even the two mysterious figures, UG and Mr. Ghost, could see that they were shocked. Now that the evil sect divided the world into three, the three big branches were straining each other, and with the great change in Wandu clan, naturally it was a great opportunity for the other two branches. Yuchi was the first to ask, What great change? Ghost King smiled and said, The god of poison is dead. What? This news was even more shocking than Ghost King's words. Ghostly and the rest were people who knew the stakes and naturally understood what this person's death meant. The Ghost King looked around at the crowd, smiled and said, None of you are stupid. You should all know that we are facing an opportunity now. Ghostly was silent for a moment, glanced at Taoist Song Song, said, This news, is it brought by this priest? Ghost King nodded and said, That's right, and these few days I have also secretly verified it. It is indeed true. Ghostly inhaled deeply, said, Then how is the situation in Wandu clan now? Ghost King glanced at Song Song. Song Song understood and said, Before God of Poison died, he left the position of clan head to Qin Huiyin, but his other disciples are not convinced. Now Wandu clan is in a mess. In order to fight for the position of clan head, the various experts are divided into different factions, fighting endlessly. Ghost King continued, The chaos is good. The more chaotic, the better. This is the best opportunity for us to unify the holy sect. He paused for a moment, suddenly smiled, and said to Ghostly, Speaking of which, it is because you heavily injured Qin Huiyin in the Death Marsh. Then this chaos happened. Your credit is not small. Ghostly was moved, looked up at Ghost King. Ghost King's gaze was as usual, his eyes glimmering, but he could not see any unusual expression. He could only remain silent. Ghost King did not speak much on this topic, said, Today I asked everyone to come here for a discussion, mainly because Taoist Song Song has a plan. It can help our Ghost King sect to wipe out Wandu clan in one stroke. Everyone was shocked. Wandu clan had always been the first among the evil sect's three main branches, although right now, their mortal enemy god of poison was already dead, but a centipede would not fall even after death. Even if they used all of Ghost King's sect's power to wipe out Wandu clan in one stroke, it would still be beset with difficulties. Even if they could do it, most likely their own vitality would be greatly damaged, and it would be a great advantage to He Huan's sect, who were watching coldly from the sidelines. Ghostly knew that Ghost King had always been meticulous and would definitely be able to see through this logic that even he himself could easily understand. For a moment, he was also curious about Taoist Song Song's so-called brilliant plan, said, Oh, there is actually such a brilliant plan. I would like to consult with you. Taoist Song Song did not decline modestly, nodded slightly to Ghost King, looked around at the crowd and said, Does everyone know what the world is most afraid of right now? This irrelevant question. Ghost Lee and the rest were stunned. UG said, Naturally, it is those man-eating demon beasts in the southern border. Priest, why are you mentioning these monsters out of the blue? Mr. Ghost, who was sitting beside Ghost King, after the initial shock, suddenly nodded slightly under the black veil, made a soft sound, as if he had thought of something. Taoist Song Song said to UG, This plan will have to depend on these demon beasts. If not with Wandu clan's power, whoever wants to swallow it will also be greatly damaged. Most of the crowd by now already understood. Ghostly nodded and said, That's right. If we can make Wandu clan and the demon beasts fight each other, it would naturally be the best. But how can we do that? Taoist Song Song smiled and said, Actually, it is very simple to say. Those demon beasts kill on sight, and many of them have sensitive noses and are fond of human flesh. We only have to do this. His voice gradually became deeper. The meticulously planned plan little by little revealed in front of the crowd. Time quietly slipped by in the midst of the discussion. When the secret meeting ended, The crowd did not know how much time had passed. Ghost King and Mr. Ghost were the first to leave. UG, after looking at Ghostly, also quietly left. Very soon, only Ghost Lee and Taoist Song Song were left in the room, and they did not have the intention to leave immediately. Looking away from other places, slowly wandering around the quiet stone room, finally back to that person's face, he discovered he was also looking at him. In the stone room, it was quiet. Suddenly, he seemed to be able to hear the sounds of breathing and heartbeats. Ghostly suddenly said, "Do you have something to say to me?" Taoist Song Song stared at him. After a long while, slowly said, "Yes, but I do not know what to say now." Ghostly was silent. After a moment, faintly said, "These 10 years, have you been a Qingyun?" Taoist Song Song's face was indifferent, but his eyes suddenly turned complicated, sighed, and said, "I have been there, but it was only a few glances from afar." "What about you?" Ghostly slowly stood up. The corner of his lips moved, said, "I have also been there. The mountains and rivers did not change much from 10 years ago. Only the people have changed." Taoist Song Song smiled faintly. In his smile, there was an indescribable bitterness. Quietly said, "Yes, only people will change." Ghostly turned and walked out. The moment he stepped out, he heard Taoist Song Song, who was still sitting on the seat, muttering faintly, "Qingyun, Qingyun, ha, Qingyun ah." The next moment, he left the stone room and never looked back. On the bridge above the blood pool, in the thick stench of blood, Ghost King and Mr. Ghost, who had just returned, looked into the blood pool. Yellowbird and Kuei Neo were still lying lifelessly in the blood pool, and the hidden dragon cauldron in the air was slowly rotating, emitting red light from time to time. Ghost King indifferently said, "These two spiritual beasts are almost done?" Mr. Ghost nodded and said, "Yes, Yellowbird and Kuei Neo's spiritual powers are already suppressed by the hidden dragon cauldron. Right now, they are completely subdued. Seems like the inscriptions on the hidden dragon cauldron regarding the 4 divinities' blood formation is indeed real." Ghost King nodded and said, "The hidden dragon cauldron is an ancient object. Its spiritual power is not to be underestimated. Even these 2 spiritual beasts are already subdued by it. As long as we subdue the other 2 spiritual beasts, then the matter will be accomplished." Mr. Ghost hesitated for a moment, said, "Sect head, regarding Taoist Song Song's plan, do you think this person is trustworthy?" A strange glint flashed in Ghost King's eyes. He smiled and said, "Song Song is no longer that Song Song 10 years ago, although the world is big now, but only our holy sect can protect him. And that plan of his is only a few more ordinary disciples dying. It doesn't matter." Mr. Ghost's black veil moved slightly, suddenly said, "Since it is so, I have another idea. Maybe we can let sect head, besides dealing with Wandu clan, also deal with Yihuan's sect." Ghost King was shocked. His face lit up, said, "What? There is actually such a thing. Mr. Please enlighten me." Mr. Ghost bowed slightly, said, "I don't dare. What I mean is, since sect head does not care about a few more ordinary disciples dying, then we might as well complete the matter to the end. After luring the demon beast to fight with Wandu clan, sect head will use Ghost King's sect's name to send a letter to Yihuan's sect Samyao Madam, saying that we are all holy sect disciples. We really cannot leave them to die, and the demon beasts are rampant, killing on sight without distinguishing between right and wrong. If this goes on, our holy sect will also be in danger. Why not combine the 3 sects' strength and fight? Maybe there will be some chance of victory." Ghost King frowned and said, "Sounds nice, but Samyao Madam is also a cunning person. I'm afraid she will not believe it." Mr. Ghost indifferently said, "Just talk and no action. Naturally, she will not believe it." Ghost King was shocked, said, "Mr. means," Mr. Ghost said, "If more than half of Ghost King's sect disciples are killed, corpses strewn everywhere, don't tell me she still won't believe it?" Ghost King was stunned. For a long time he could not speak. After a long while he frowned and said, "Mister's meaning is to abandon more than half of Ghost King's sect disciples?" Mr. Ghost's black veil covered his face. His expression could not be seen clearly. His voice was calm, as if when he was talking about these many lives, there was no fluctuation of emotions at all. Said, "Sect head, you want to achieve great things. Why do you care about these people's lives?" Ghost King could not help but struggle. His desire for power and that trace of reluctance in his heart repeatedly fought. The smell of blood in the air seemed to become heavier. Mr. Ghost quietly stood at the side, patiently waiting. After a long time, the glint in Ghost King's eyes gradually intensified. A faint blush seemed to appear on his face, as if the smell of blood in the air had penetrated in. He breathed deeply, suddenly with a long whistle, resolutely said, "Mr. is right, but how do we know Samyao Madam is not hitting us when we are down, and instead want to eat us up?" Mr. Ghost coldly laughed, said, "Samyao Madam is naturally the one hitting us when we are down. Among the evil sect 3 big branches, which one of them is really willing to sacrifice for our holy sect friends?" Ghost King was stunned, and then his eyes brightened, blurted out, "Ah, you were saying, brilliant, brilliant." While praising, Ghost King could not help but clapped his hands and applauded, said, "Mr. is indeed a rare talent, actually have such a brilliant plan." Mr. Ghost coldly said, "We will use this half of the Ghost King's sect disciples as bait. Why not, sect head, you personally lead them to fight with the demon beasts? When the casualties are almost exhausted, Huan's sect will assume that we, Wandu clan, and the demon beasts have already suffered heavy losses. Then Samyao Madam will definitely lead a large group of people to exterminate us. At that time, with sect heads' remarkable powers, naturally you can find a chance to swiftly escape and leave. The remaining matters to the demon beasts. Looking at the demon beasts' invincible situation these days, I'm afraid it will be difficult for Huan's sect to not be completely wiped out." Ghost King nodded his head repeatedly, unable to suppress the joy in his heart, but in this excited moment, he was still able to maintain a trace of calmness, suddenly turned and said, "But Mr., in this way, our Ghost King sect can naturally unify the Holy Sect, but the Holy Sect has already suffered heavy losses. If the demon beasts again..." Mr. Ghost shook his head and said, "Sect head, don't tell me you have forgotten. Our Holy Sect in the Northwest Wildlands still has the Holy Temple. As long as we unify the Holy Sect and then bring all the remaining Ghost King sect backbones to the Wildlands, consolidate the Holy Sect forces there. Although the demon beasts are savage, but for the time being they will still wreak havoc in the Central Plains, unable to chase them to the Wildlands. And after that, those Central Plains good faction people, isn't it time for them to be of use?" Ghost King was finally completely at ease, heaved a long sigh, sighed and said, "Mr. is really a good teacher and helpful friend bestowed to me by heaven." Mr. Ghost smiled and said, "After that, those so-called good faction and demon beasts will fight, no matter who wins or loses. Most likely they will suffer, although the demon beasts are savage, but I see the world's good faction gathering at Qingyun. 10 years ago, Qingyun, Zhu Xian sword formation power. Sect head, I believe you still remember?" Ghost King nodded and said, "That's right, very powerful." Mr. Ghost smiled and said, "So for the demon beast to win easily, it will not be that easy. We will instead recuperate in the Wildlands. Once the 4 divinities blood formation is successfully mastered, then in this world, who can stop our holy sect divine might?" Ghost King was surprised and said, "Why, don't tell me Mr. also has news about the other 2 spiritual beasts." Mr. Ghost said, "That's right, after the hidden dragon cauldron has completely subdued the divine beast, yellow bird and spiritual beast Kuei Nyo, new inscriptions have already appeared on the cauldron. The next one is the demon beast torch dragon that is guarding our holy sect's Wildlands holy temple. After we return to the holy temple to subdue it, only the southern evil beast Tao Tai is left. At that time, as long as we find Tao Tai, the world will still be in sect head's hands." Ghost King took a step forward, looked at the blood pool below. The thick stench of blood in the air surrounded him. In a trance, there was a feeling that the world was in his hands. He could not help but laugh to the sky, his laughter loud and clear, and his laughter was that savage. Chapter 284. Qingyun Hill, Tong Tian Peak. Outside Crystal Hall, a large group of people stood densely packed. Looking carefully, they were all good faction people, including Qingyun sect head Reverend Daoxian and Funxiang Valley Master Yunilon were also among them. Behind the 2 of them, Qingyun and Funxiang sect's other famous figures and masters were also standing there. Looking at the formation, it seemed like they were welcoming someone. Not knowing who it was, to have such a big face? Not counting those small sects. Right now, Qingyun sect and Funxiang Valley important figures were all present. Funxiang Valley Shangwan Su, Lu Shun, second-generation disciples Li Sun, Yan Hong, etc. were all standing behind Yun Yilan. Among them, Li Sun was expressionless, but his complexion did not look good, and around him there were people discussing in low voices, glancing at him from time to time, making his expression even uglier. And over at Qingyun sect, Tian Bui, Zheng Shuchang, Shuewa Master and Kaheo, etc. heads of various branches were also present, including Xiao Yikai, and the other disciples were also standing behind Reverend Daoxian. Just that in the crowd, Qingyun sect's most outstanding in recent years, Lu Sueki, was not seen. Other than that, Lin Jingyu also did not see anyone, not sure if she was at Founder's Ancestral Hall again. This day, the weather was clear, the sky was cloudless for thousands of miles, the mountain breeze blew gently, giving people a feeling of being relaxed and happy. If not for the fact that there were too many grudges and killings in this mortal world, this place would really be like a paradise on earth. In the crowd behind, many people were discussing in low voices, indistinctly. Most of them were discussing about the greatest catastrophe in the mortal world. Qingyun sect head Reverend Daoxian heard it. His face solemn, could not help but lightly sighed. His voice was not loud. The people around him did not notice, but Funxiang Valley Master Yun Yilan, who was standing at the front of the crowd, heard it. Turned his head, he glanced at Reverend Daoxian, quietly said, "Daoxian, senior brother, why are you sighing?" Daoxian smiled bitterly and shook his head. "Listen to the whispers of our friends behind us. Very few of them are optimistic." Yun Yilan smiled, said, "Daoxian, senior brother, why care about them? Although the calamity is over, the people are in misery and suffering, but right now we are already the last hope of the common people. Facing such vicious monsters, senior brother, you, as the leader of the world, if you do not have confidence, how can you face the common people's earnest hopes?" Reverend Daoxian's countenance changed slightly. A glint flashed in his eyes. He looked deeply at Yun Yilan, but saw that this person's face was calm. As if there was no hidden meaning in his words, he smiled and said, "Yin patron, what are you saying? What virtue or ability does poor Taoist have to be worthy of world leader?" These 4 words. This calamity of the demon beasts, tormenting the living, we as Taoists, and have always prided ourselves on the righteous way. Naturally, we cannot stay out of it. When Tian'in Temple Puhong Master arrives, our 3 sects together with the world's heroes die for the people, it will not be in vain. Yin Yilan nodded, said, "Senior brother is right." Reverend Daoxian smiled and returned the greeting, but a strange feeling flashed past his heart. This Funxiang Valley Master Yun Yilan had always been modest and appropriate in his speech, impeccable, but he himself seemed to be unable to see through this person, always felt that this person seemed to be unfathomable. Just when Reverend Daoxian was contemplating whether to find a chance to test this Yun Yilan, to see what exactly he was planning, there was a stir in the crowd. Reverend Daoxian and Yun Yilan both perked up, looked down the mountain, and indeed saw deep in the white clouds floating around Tongtian Peak. Suddenly a golden light flashed, and then swiftly enlarged, in a short while it was already nearing the peak. The golden light floated, in the shape of a blooming golden lotus, drifted up among the white clouds. Waves of Sanskrit sounds reverberated between heaven and earth. All kinds of solemn atmosphere made one feel reverence. Reverend Daoxian and Yun Yilan at the same time went up. The golden lotus landed, swayed and flickered for a moment. The golden light dispersed, revealing Tian'in Temple Puhong Master and several Buddhist monks. Puhong Master's appearance was the same as before, benevolent and peaceful, golden red Buddhist robe, solemn and dignified, holding a string of dark sandalwood prayer beads in his hand, a trace of smile on his lips. Behind him stood a tall and sturdy junior brother Pu Fong, holding the golden Buddha alms bowl. Behind him were a dozen over Tian'in Temple eminent monks and second-generation disciples. Fa Xiang, Fashion, and the other already famous Buddhist disciples were also among them. Reverend Daoxian walked forward, smiled, and said, "Puhong Master, you are finally here. Everyone has been waiting for you for a long time." Puhong Master smiled and nodded, said, "Puhong Master, you are finally here. Everyone has been waiting for you for a long time. At this moment, Yin Elon, who was standing beside Reverend Daoxian, laughed loudly and said, "Master, do you still recognize me? Long time no see, old friends from back then. You better not forget all of them." Puhong Master glanced at Yin Elon, his expression clearly surprised. Even his usual smile also disappeared for a moment, and then a trace of admiration flashed past his eyes, said, "Don't tell me this patron is actually Yin Elon, Yin Old Valley Master?" Yin Elon laughed loudly, bowed and said, "It is me, greetings Abbot Master." Puhong came up and bowed to return the greeting, smiled and said, "I have long heard that Funxiang Valley skills are profound, especially the Funxiang Jade book. Three-Yang realm is even more mystical. Yin Patron's willpower is firm, your talent outstanding. Don't tell me you've already attained the Jade Yang realm." Yin Elon's countenance changed slightly, his heart shocked. Funxiang Valley skills had always been known as a secret among the good faction. Far from Qin Yin sect and Tian Yin Temple, these two big sects whose reputations shook the world, once Tai Ji Xian Qin Wei, or Great Brahmin Wisdom, was mentioned, everyone knew about it. But this time, when he entered the Central Plains and met the two big influential leaders of the Central Plains, his skills were actually seen through by Reverend Daoxian and Puhong Master. Once he thought of the relationship, he could not help but secretly felt suspicious. Don't tell me there is a spy in my sect? Just that thinking was just thinking, but his face was still composed, smiled and said, "Master's discerning eyes are like torches. My little bit of skills is not worth mentioning." After a pause, Yin Elon's face turned slightly solemn, said, "But since Master is here, then it's good. Now that the world is in misery and suffering, evildoers running amok, it is really an unprecedented calamity. I hope Master can lead the world's good faction, get rid of this calamity. This is the greatest good." Reverend Daoxian stood aside. His countenance suddenly changed slightly. Puhong Master modestly declined. "Yin Patron, were you saying, the world's common people are in trouble, the demon beasts are wreaking havoc, Tian Yin Temple are all Buddhist disciples. How can we retreat? Just that now the world's good faction has gathered in Qin Yun. Daoxian's senior brother has always been a person of virtue and prestige. His skills are even more remarkable. Naturally, Daoxian's senior brother should be the leader. Lead the world's good faction to fight against the strong enemy." Reverend Daoxian smiled and said, "Master is too polite. Daoxian really does not deserve it." Puhong Master put his palms together and said, "Daoxian's sect head, now the common people are looking forward to it day and night, is to get rid of this calamity as soon as possible. You must not decline again." Yin Elon laughed, said, "Both of you are highly skilled people. There is no need to be so courteous. Come. Let's go in and talk. If not to let so many fellow friends accompany the three of us to talk and enjoy the breeze, wouldn't it be neglecting others?" Reverend Daoxian and Puhong Master looked at each other and smiled, walked in together. Along the way, there were people greeting Puhong Master and the Tian Yin Temple monks. It could be seen that Tian Yin Temple's reputation in the good faction was very high. Along the way into the Crystal Hall, Puhong Master praised a few more words. Qin Yun sect's newly built Crystal Hall was magnificent, majestic, and spectacular. Reverend Daoxian smiled and thanked, invited Puhong Master to sit at the main seat. Puhong Master refused, declined several times, and finally Reverend Daoxian was the host and sat at the main seat. Puhong Master and Yin Elon sat on both sides. Right now, there were more than 100 people standing in the hall, but the seats were limited, other than a few reputable rogue immortals. The rest were the figures from the three big sects. From this, it could be seen the status and power of the three big sects in the good faction, and the discussion of countermeasures and so on. Naturally, it was also the discussions of the three big sections. After everyone sat down, Yin Elon was the first to speak, asked Puhong Master, "Master, on your way here, did you see those cruel monsters?" Puhong Master nodded, said, "Yes, we also eliminated some of them." The crowd beside stirred. The calamity of the demon beasts had long spread throughout the world. Many people had seen it, but in this Qin Yun Hill Crystal Hall, good faction people, other than the disciples sent out by the three big sects to gather information, there were not many from other sections. Reverend Daoxian was also moved, said, "Oh, there's such a matter. Why not, Master, say it? Let everyone here know." Puhong Master put his palms together, said, "I dare not. Actually, we also did not expect to meet those monsters on the way here. We have always heard that these evildoers are still wreaking havoc in the south, but when we arrived at a small village 700 miles south of Qingyun Hill, we discovered more than 10 monsters attacking the village. Unfortunately, we were too late. Those villagers were all killed." "Ah!" Reverend Daoxian and Yun Elon both exclaimed, 700 miles south of Qingyun Hill. Although it was not near, but it was not very far either. And the Tian'in Temple monks standing beside Puhong Master, most of them showed unbearable expressions. A few of them even put their palms together and chanted. Most likely the scene must have been very tragic, left a deep impression on these monks. Puhong Master sighed. Unbearable expression also flashed past his face, sighed and said, "Those monsters were really like what the legend said. Their appearances were mutated from several ferocious beasts in the southern border, and their nature was cruel and murderous. Not a single person in the village was left alive. Meeting such monsters, even if we broke our vow to kill and our cultivation was affected, we still wanted to get rid of the evil for the people, so we went down and got rid of them." Reverend Daoxian raised one of his palms, said, "Master is enforcing justice on behalf of heaven. What you are doing is virtuous deeds, and not a sin of killing. Master need not feel sad about this." Puhong sighed, nodded his head. Yin Elon frowned. He was concerned about another issue, said, "Abbot Master, I have another matter to consult you on." Puhong Master said, "Yin Valley Master, please speak." Yin Elon said, "Previously we did not hear that those monsters had already reached there. Now that Master has met them, I believe the monsters will soon reach the vicinity of Qingyun Hill. Not sure on this journey. Other than this village, did Master discover any other monsters?" Puhong Master shook his head and said, "Not this, other than that village. We did not see them anywhere else. I think it could be that a small portion of the monsters ran fast and coincidentally met us." Reverend Daoxian sighed and said, "Serves them right. Unfortunately, they could not save those villagers." The monks heard him, put their palms together and chanted. Yin Elon nodded his head slightly, said, "Master, then from the battle between those monsters and Tian'in Temple eminent monks that you saw, how is their combat power?" Puhong Master pondered for a moment, said, "These evildoers are most likely some ordinary monsters, just that they have big strength, sharp claws, ferocious and brutal. If we really have to compare, our ordinary cultivation skills can win them." Yin Elon nodded his head, said, "Seems like most of these monsters are ordinary monsters, separated from their companions." Speaking, he paused, turned his head and spoke to Li Sun behind him. "Sun, tell Puhong Master about the news that we have gathered these few days." Li Sun acknowledged, walked out, respectfully bowed to Puhong Master. Puhong Master smiled and said, "Li Nephew, don't have to be so courteous. Please speak." Li Sun nodded his head and said, "Reporting to Master, in this period of time, we have sent many of our colleagues to the south to investigate. Discovered that this time the demon calamity was so tragic, there are 3 main reasons. First, the ordinary demon monsters looked like they were mutated ferocious beasts. Although we do not know what kind of mutation it is, but these monsters are indeed more ferocious than the original ferocious beasts, and also more cruel. Ordinary people definitely cannot resist. Second, the number of demonic beasts that came out from the south this time is uncountable. The disciples we sent out have seen numerous demonic beasts swarming over from the sky. The number is at least more than 10,000. Under such circumstances, no matter how high your skills are, I'm afraid it will also be useless. Third, among these ordinary beasts, there seems to be an unknown number of special beasts. These beasts are different from the ordinary monsters. Their evil skills are powerful, even better than many cultivators, and until today, no one has seen that legendary beast deity. And so we do not know what kind of person he is, but to be able to control these countless monsters, I'm afraid he is also an extremely troublesome character." Puhong Master's white brows frowned tightly. The group of monks behind him also looked at each other. This time the demon calamity. The situation was obviously unprecedented. Looking at Li Sun's expression when he spoke, and Xinyan's sect, Funxiang Valley people's solemn expressions. Clearly everyone's mood was heavy. Chapter 285. The Great Hall momentarily sank into silence. After a long while, Yin Elon heaved a long sigh, smiled and said, "If these monsters are not powerful, how would it be the calamity of the ages? Anyway, since it has come to this, it is useless to think too much. Why don't we discuss how to defend against these evildoers?" Reverend Daoxian nodded and said, "Yin Valley Master is right. How about this? I still have some inferior tea that I have collected for many years. Both of you please come to the inner hall to have a taste. We will talk while drinking." Puhong Master and Yin Elon understood and stood up, exchanged a few words with their disciples, and followed Reverend Daoxian into the inner hall. After the three highly respected figures left, the atmosphere in Crystal Hall slowly relaxed. Xiao Yikai, Kaheo, Li Sun, etc., and Tianyin temples, Efasiong and Fashion were old acquaintances, immediately gathered together to talk. Taking advantage of this rare moment, Xiao Yikai suggested to bring Efasiong and Fashion to have a good look at Tongtian Peak scenery. Efasiong and the rest happily agreed, and Li Sun and the rest happened to have nothing to do, so followed them out. It was already summer now. The human world's climate was gradually getting hotter, but on this towering Tongtian Peak, it was still extremely cool. Walking to a cliff with railings far away from the peak, leaning on the railings and gazing afar, the vast sea of clouds, the blue sky above, made one unable to help but feel otherworldly. Efasiong praised, "I have long heard of Qing Yun Hill's paradise. 10 years ago when I was here, it was already an eye-opener for me. Seeing it again today is still so spectacular, breathtaking, really a wonder of the human world." Xiao Yikai smiled and said, "Efasiong's senior brother is too polite. Speaking about scenery, your Mount Shumi Tianyin Temple's wordless jade wall and Shumi Wei Kama Mustard Seed Mountain, aren't they even more famous?" Efasiong smiled and said, "Those are all small sceneries. How can they be compared to Qing Yun's spectacular scenery?" The corner of his eyes shifted. Suddenly he noticed Li Sun and Yan Hong standing behind him. Yan Hong did not say anything, but Li Sun's face seemed to be unconvinced. Just that after all, he was not like that year. Now he had more self-restraint and did not express it. Efasiong's thoughts were meticulous. His expression did not change and naturally continued. "But to really talk about these sceneries, I think in this world, only Li Senior Brother's Inferno Heaven at Funxiang Valley can be mentioned in the same breath. Am I right, Senior Brother Li?" Li Sun was surprised. A trace of smile revealed on his face, but he still thanked him modestly. "Efasiong's senior brother is overpraising me. Funxiang Valley is a small place, and it is located in a remote area. I dare not to compare with Central Plains." Xiao Yikai's eyes had a deep meaning. He glanced at Efasiong. The corner of his mouth revealed a trace of smile, yet not a smile expression, and then laughed and said, all right. Everyone don't need to praise here and there. Anyway, every place has its own scenery. The human world is so vast, I wonder if we will be able to see it all in our lifetime." For a moment, everyone was moved. They replied in unison, "Exactly." After saying that, they all burst out laughing. After chatting and laughing for a while, Li Sun seemed to think of something and slowly walked to Xiao Yikai's side. When no one was paying attention, he said in a low voice, "Xiao Shixiang, can I ask?" Xiao Yikai was startled, said, "Li Shixiang, there's no harm in saying what you want to say." Li Sun hesitated for a moment, finally could not help but speak out, said, These few days, especially such an important day like today, why did we not see Small Bamboo Valley, Lu Sweki Jr. sister appearing?" Xiao Yikai's countenance changed slightly, glanced at Li Sun, quietly said, "Li Shixiang, Lu Jr.'s sister, because of contradicting my teacher Daoxian Sekhead in public that day at Crystal Hall, has now been ordered to reflect on her mistakes at Small Bamboo Valley Full Moon Platform. Until today, it has already been a few days." Li Sun made an ah sound. His expression complicated, seemed sad, and also a little ashamed and angry. After a long while he sighed again, smiled bitterly at Xiao Yikai, said, "Thank you, Xiao Shixiang, for telling me. I am very grateful. Later I will plead with my teacher, see if I can ask him to persuade Daoxian teacher uncle from the side. AI, consider it as doing my part. Xiao Yikai nodded, did not speak, only stretched out his hand and patted his shoulder. Standing in the crowd watching the beautiful scenery, Efeixiong slowly withdrew his gaze from the two people who were whispering behind him. Suddenly heard someone beside him said in a low voice, "Does Master know about Li's senior brother proposing to Lu Jr.'s sister Lu Sueki?" Efeixiong smiled, glanced at Keheo, who was standing beside him, said, "I have heard about it." Keheo nodded and did not speak. Efeixiong instead suddenly sighed. His voice was filled with sorrow. Keheo was slightly surprised, said, "Efeixiong Shixiang, why are you sighing like that?" Efeixiong smiled faintly, recovered his original expression, said, "Nothing," suddenly thought of an old friend only. Keheo curiously said, "Old friend? What old friend?" Efeixiong leisurely said, "An old friend who once went through fire and water with us, and that Lu Miss is closely related." Keheo was silent. After a long time, he also heaved a heavy sigh. In his voice, there were also some vicissitudes of the world. Things remain the same, but people have changed. Evil Sect Wandu clan headquarters was at Central Plains' southwest direction, a place called Venomous Serpent Valley. According to the geographical location, Venomous Serpent Valley and Ghost King Sect's majestic Fox Mountain, Hewan Sect's Xiao Yao Stream, just happened to form a big triangle, restraining each other, confronting each other, forming the current Evil Sect's rather stable balance of powers. But right now, this balance had already reached a precarious stage, especially in Wandu clan, which was originally the strongest in the Evil Sect, following the old head god of poison Old Man's death, revolving around the new head succession. Wandu clan was already in a state of mutual hostility. The situation at Venomous Serpent Valley, where the headquarters was located, was also already in a state of mutual hostility. The situation could erupt at any moment. Nominally speaking, the one who obtained the God of Poison's dying wish and the official successor was God of Poison's last disciple Qin Huiyin. Unfortunately, in the Evil Sect, especially in Wandu clan, which was a martial sect where strength was more important than anything else, just relying on God of Poison's dying wish was of no use. Not long after God of Poison's passing, his other few disciples rushed back to Venomous Serpent Valley, coming in menacingly, displaying an attitude of wanting to fight for the position of head. And although Qin Huiyin had obtained God of Poison's true skills and his skills far surpassed his senior brothers, but firstly, his seniority in Wandu clan was not deep. Some of the important highly skilled worshippers were almost all standing on his senior brother's side. Secondly, the last time in the Death Marsh, he was ambushed by Ghost King Sect's Blood Gongzi Ghost Li and was seriously injured. Although he had more or less recovered by now, but Ghost Li's extremely vicious and evil magical. Weapon Sinister Orb really made him suffer. That blood-devouring evil power was like a maggot attached to the bone, firmly sucked into the energy channels in his body, causing his cultivation to be greatly reduced, and also gave others the opportunity to spy on the throne. But fortunately, at this critical juncture, Qin Huiyin finally using the strange skills of God of Poison's true skills, together with the seven-tailed centipede and the other 5 kinds of deadly poisons, forcibly cleared that strange blood-devouring evil power out of his body. And this important matter had only happened a few days ago. Qin Huiyin's thoughts were deep and had been keeping this secret. He knew that right now, he was already the target of public criticism, and so he was willing to bear with it. His patience was soon rewarded. The 3 senior brothers Fan Xiong, Cheng Wuya, and Duan Rushan, who were originally working together to form an alliance to snatch the position of the sect leader, after discovering that this junior brother, whom they feared the most, was actually already suffering from internal injuries and suffering. And he also very sincerely expressed that their master had indeed passed down the position to him before his death, but he himself did not want to take the position, and even handed over the sect leader's seal on the spot and placed it before the God of Poison's spirit tablet, stating that only the person who becomes the sect leader can obtain it. The alliance of the 3 God of Poison's descendants quickly started to crumble. Wandu clan's highly skilled priests and disciples, right now, were also divided into 3 groups, with Baidu Zi as the leader, standing on the eldest senior brother Fan Xiong's side, and blood-sucking demon who had a grudge with Zhang Xiaofan for killing his disciple, together with his good friend Elder Duanmu, stood behind the second brother Chengwuya. As for the remaining third brother Duan Rushan, although ranked last among the 4 God of Poison disciples, but he had always been adept at scheming and had long secretly plotted. This time his power was temporarily the strongest. Many of Wandu clan's old monsters who had not appeared for a long time were roped in by him. Almost half of the disciples also stood on his side. And right now, in the venomous Serpent Valley, it was the last day of the God of Poison's 7th day. The news of God of Poison's passing had already spread. The white banners in the morning hall were like mountains, but it was rare to hear 1 or 2 cries. Most of the Wandu clan disciples, although wore white silk on their heads, sackcloth on their bodies, but there was not even a trace of sorrow or pain on their faces. On the contrary, many of them were glaring angrily, confronting the other group. If not for scruples about the last bit of face in the morning hall, most likely this place would have long become a martial hall and not a mourning hall. God of Poison's 4 disciples, all dressed in heavy mourning, knelt in front of the crowd, but other than Qin Huiyan, the other 3 only kowtowed 3 times and stood to the side. Behind them also stood many people, confronting each other, and innumerable eyes, intentionally or unintentionally, looked at that coffin in the morning hall. On the offering table, placed a small green box. On it were written 4 words. God of Poison's seal. It was the seal that only the head of Wandu clan since ancient times could possess. On the offering table were fruits and 3 animals. On the ground in front of the table was a copper basin, burning with fire. After Qin Huiyan finished kowtowing, different from his 3 senior brothers, he quietly knelt to the side, took the paper money, one by one, placed it into the copper basin, and burned it for the deceased. And his 3 senior brothers did not even look at him. Anyway, no matter which of them eventually became the head, this cripple would not be able to escape the fate of being poisoned to death. Most of their attention was still on the small box. Fan Xiong, with a fierce and ferocious face, suddenly snorted, took a step forward, walked towards that offering table, but Chengwuya and Duan Rushan, who were already prepared, almost at the same time flashed out. Duan Rushan sneered and said, "Big senior brother, the 7th day of teacher's death has not ended. What do you want to do?" Fan Xiong's eyes stared. A fierce glint flashed on his face, said, "I am the big senior brother. Of course this position will be inherited by me." Chengwuya snorted and said, "From what do you see, this position is taken by big senior brother?" Duan Rushan also sneered and said, "You want to talk about seniority rules, right? If you really want to talk about rules, teacher also passed down the position to little junior brother before his death. How can it be your turn?" Fan Xiong's eyes glinted with a fierce glint, abruptly turned and looked at Qin Huiyan. Qin Huiyan did not even raise his head. His voice still sounded weak, coughed once, trembled and said, "3 senior brothers, when you all just came back. Cough, cough, cough. I have already immediately handed over the official seal and stated that I am not interested in this position. You all, cough, cough, you all entered the sect earlier than me. Your reputation is higher than me. Naturally, it should be you all sitting in this position. Teacher is already old. I think he was a little muddle-headed when he left, and so spoke carelessly. Who exactly is going to sit in this position? You all decide. Don't drag me into it." His voice, deep and trembling, seemed to have a guilty conscience and fear. Where was the deep and arrogant look from before? Fan Xiong sneered, turned his head disdainfully, did not look at him again, said, "Then what exactly do you all intend to do?" Duan Rushan sneered, said, "Don't say any more. It is still the same as what we agreed. Teacher's death will be passed first. After he has passed away, tomorrow we will decide in this morning hall who exactly is going to sit in this position." Fan Xiong stared fiercely at Duan Rushan and Chengwuya. His 2 junior brothers also did not look at him kindly. After a while, Fan Xiong abruptly turned and strode out of the morning hall. A large group of people followed behind him and also walked out. Chengwuya and Duan Rushan also led their men out. In the morning hall, very soon only Qin Huiyan was left kneeling quietly on the ground guarding the coffin. Not knowing how much time had passed, the stack of paper money in Qin Huiyan's hands were all burned clean in the copper basin. He then slowly raised his head. His eyes under the white silk were indifferent and without luster. "Teacher." His voice was so soft that only he himself could hear. "Teacher, did you see? These people are your disciples. your subordinates. Qin Wuyan's cold lips slowly curled into a sneer, cold and without any emotion. Chapter 286. The night gradually darkened. The venomous Serpent Valley, which had been immersed in the intangible tension for an entire day, also seemed to slowly enter into a deep slumber. The dim lights slowly extinguished, other than that cold and lonely morning hall. The door of the morning hall was still opened outwards. The cold night wind blew past, blowing the still burning candles in the hall until they flickered, casting strange shadows on the ground. Far outside the door, in the silence, there seemed to be a voice softly whispering, like crying, like low laughter, and also like the sound of the wind blowing the trees, making one unable to hear it clearly, only felt a chill in one's heart. From the few remaining candles in the morning hall that were still struggling at death's door, one could see that there was a faint mist drifting outside the house at night in this valley. It was like a light smoke, drifting back and forth in the darkness and shadows, changing into all kinds of shapes. And in the morning hall, the person keeping vigil throughout the night was still only Qin Wuyan. He was still kneeling in front of the coffin, his head lowered, his eyes drifting, as if looking at some unknown place. The copper basin in front of him was already filled with the black ashes of the burnt paper money, trembling with the night wind that blew in. Occasionally 1 or 2 pieces of ashes would be blown up by the wind, left the copper basin, slowly drifting in the house, and then most of them would quietly land on the offering table in front of the coffin, on the 3 sacrificial dishes. Unknowingly, was there still a pair of eyes, watching all of this? Footsteps were suddenly heard, stepping on the flat ground into the morning hall. Qin Wuyan's body shook. No matter who it was, the footsteps behind him at this moment would not be a pleasant thing. He turned around and frowned. His expression was one of surprise. It was obvious that the person who had come was not within his expectations. Reflected in his eyes was a tall figure, but his attire was very different from the ordinary evil sect disciples. Dressed in a Taoist robe, his square face solemn, it was evil sect One Du clan's Taoist Song Song. Qin Wuyan looked at Song Song. Song Song also looked at Qin Wuyan. Both of them did not speak. Then Song Song walked straight to the offering table in front of the coffin, picked up the incense on the table, placed down a candle and lit it, respectfully bowed to the memorial tablet, stepped forward and inserted the candle into the incense burner. Qin Wuyan patiently watched Taoist Song Song's every move from the beginning to the end. When Taoist Song Song turned around again, Qin Wuyan slightly lowered his head, considered a disciple returning the bow. Although his face was expressionless, but his tone was still very calm, politely said, "Thank you, priest." Taoist Song Song nodded his head, said, "Me and the elderly are after all the host and guest, although this incense stick is a little late, but it is still my regards." Taoist Song Song was still kneeling. Taoist Song priest Song Qin Wuyan and said, "Taoist Song Song Qin Song." Taoist Song Song stared at Qin Wuyan, looked for a while, suddenly laughed, and said, "Qin Gongzi, you seem to not like me all along." Qin Wuyan's eyes lifted slightly, as if he did not expect Taoist Song Song to suddenly ask such a question, felt it was strange, but after looking at Taoist Song Song for a while, he still calmly said, "Priest has misunderstood. Your Excellency is my teacher's guest when he was still alive. In One Du clan you are also considered as a highly respected senior. Wuyan, do not dare to slight you. Just that now my teacher has unfortunately passed away. My heart is grieving. If I have been disrespectful, I hope Senior will be magnanimous enough to forgive me." Taoist Song Song still had a smile on his face. His eyes slowly turned to God of Poison's memorial tablet. In front of that tablet, the box containing One Du clan's official seal was quietly placed there. Taoist Song Song looked for a while. Suddenly a few low and strange sounds were heard from his body, like some insect cries. Qin Wuyan's countenance changed slightly. Taoist Song Song was also surprised, but then suddenly laughed and said, old head, you should be able to go in peace. Look at the one you have taught. There is actually such an outstanding disciple, really not simple at all." Qin Wuyan's face darkened. A sharp glint indistinctly flashed past his eyes, and a deep voice said, "Taoist Song Song, what did you say?" Taoist Song Song turned his head, smiled, but did not speak, only gently pulled up his sleeve. Qin Huiyan's pupils contracted, saw a small box tied to Taoist Song Song's arm. That strange sound was heard again from inside, clearly heard. Taoist Song Song's face carried a mysterious smile. Slowly stretched his hand towards a memorial tablet, but when the box tied to his wrist was slightly near the tablet, where Wandu clan's official seal was placed, the box in front of the tablet also suddenly emitted a deep but very clear insect cries. That sound sounded exactly the same as the one on Taoist Song Song's wrist. Taoist Song Song slowly retracted his arm, turned and looked at Qinwen, indifferently said, "Seven-tailed centipede?" Qinwen inhaled deeply, closed his eyes. When he opened them again, his eyes glowed brightly. His entire person suddenly changed from that silent and dispirited feeling to sharp and capable. He slowly stood up from the ground, a pair of eyes staring intently at Taoist Song Song, unhurriedly repeated, "Seven-tailed centipede." The dark and gloomy morning hall, after he stood there, suddenly seemed to brighten up. The cold atmosphere in the air also disappeared. What remained was only a sharp, murderous intention. Taoist Song Song, however, did not seem to have any fear. Instead, looked as if he did not feel the changes in the surroundings, and asked Qin Huiyan with a composed expression, "You say if your teacher knew that his disciples have been fooling around in front of his coffin not long after his death, he would be very angry, right?" Qin Huiyan coldly snorted, said, "Teacher, he was wise and intelligent. He had long seen through this so-called etiquette, not to mention being disrespectful in front of his memorial tablet. Even if us disciples were to fight and kill each other here, he would most probably just smile and watch the show." Taoist Song Song slowly nodded, suddenly sighed and said, "It is indeed so. I have been with the old head day and night for these 10 years. With his character, I'm afraid it is really so." Speaking, he looked at Qin Huiyan, smiled and said, "Didn't expect that the time you spent with him was the shortest, but instead among all the disciples, you were the one who understood him the best." Qin Huiyan's expression did not change, but he took a step forward, coldly said, "Priest, aren't you also very outstanding? Not only have you seen through teacher clearly, even my every movement cannot escape your eyes." Taoist Song Song's smile froze slightly. His eyes glanced at Qin Huiyan's footsteps, suddenly said, "Now, it is already past your teacher's 7th day, right?" Qin Huiyan was surprised, did not know what Taoist Song Song's sudden question meant, but tonight this person's attitude was really strange, unfathomable. Moreover, he had already seen through the tricks he did on the head seal. Most likely he could not be allowed to live. Qin Huiyan thought so in his heart. His mouth indifferently said, "Now, it is the Cho hour. It has just passed. Why, priest, could it be that you have any advice?" Speaking, he took a step closer to Taoist Song Song. Taoist Song Song instead took a step back, nodded and said, "That's good. To let your teacher pass the 7th day safely, it can be considered as a token of my appreciation." Qin Huiyan was surprised. Without waiting for him to react, Taoist Song Song suddenly moved, in a blink flash to the entrance of the morning hall, raised his voice and loudly said, "Sect head's official seal, ah." His first few words were filled with astonishment. Halfway through his words, he was obviously still standing at his original position, but Taoist Song Song suddenly cried out in pain, as if he was heavily injured, as if he was sneak attacked by someone. Qin Huiyan's face immediately changed color, but it was already too late to stop him. Taoist Song Song's voice was already in the silent and serene venomous Serpent Valley, reverberated incessantly. The next moment there seemed to be echoes bouncing over from afar. The entire valley was filled with indistinct sounds of awe. At the beginning, the valley seemed to be startled by something, almost even more deathly silent than before, but after a moment, numerous noises surged from every corner of the valley, like waves crashing loudly, but numerous people who were already prepared for battle leapt out. All kinds of questioning, scolding, reprimanding, commanding voices merged into one, transformed into invisible waves, gushing towards this morning hall from all directions. Taoist Song Song turned his head and smiled, waved his hand at the ashen-faced Qin Huiyan, said, "My good nephew, as your uncle I will help you. In the future, if you are able to sit on the head's throne, you must not forget today's favor. Then, without further words, his figure flashed. The moment before Qin Huiyan reached the door, he swiftly flew into the darkness outside the door, in a blink disappeared. Qin Huiyan leaned against the door and panted, his eyes filled with rage. Evidently, Taoist Song Song's sudden appearance had completely disrupted his wishful thinking. Right now, the surroundings were a boiling cauldron of voices. The morning hall was about to be surrounded by the three senior brothers' numerous men. Qin Huiyan fiercely stamped his feet, made a prompt decision. Like Taoist Song Song, he plunged into the darkness outside the house. After a moment, he disappeared. The next moment, numerous Du clan disciples with torches and sharp blades in their hands, under the leadership of the god of poison's three great disciples, aggressively charged into the god of poison's morning hall. And after a moment of silence, angry cries sounded in the venomous Serpent Valley, immediately engulfed the entire valley. The night turned darker. When the first ray of light from the rising sun shone onto the earth, Taoist Song Song, who had flown out from the venomous Serpent Valley without anyone noticing, was already flying in the air on his sword, appeared above a small city 400 miles away from the venomous Serpent Valley. He looked carefully around the small city and then seemed to have discovered something, immediately landed on a small hill in the north of the city. This nameless small hill was mostly filled with wild maple trees. Looking down from the sky, it was a stretch of red, extremely beautiful. Before the maple forest, right now stood three men and one woman. It was Ghost King, Mr. Ghost, Ghostly, and UG. Seeing Song Song landing, Ghost King's face revealed a trace of smile. Went up and said, "How is it? Still successful?" Taoist Song Song nodded and said, "As expected by sect head, Qin Huiyan's injuries have indeed recovered, and he tampered with the box containing the Du clan's official seal. Most likely he placed the seven-tailed centipede inside. No matter who opens the box, as long as Qin Huiyan secretly manipulates it, no one will be able to escape the seven-tailed centipede's bite. With the seven-tailed centipede's poison, most likely that person will die." Ghost King laughed loudly, turned, and spoke to Mr. Ghost and the rest. "Look, these old-fashioned methods that have already been used countless times, there are actually still people using it." Ghostly's face was indifferent, did not say anything. UG also remained silent. Only Mr. Ghost indifferently said, "The method is indeed somewhat outdated, but as long as it is useful, it is a good method." Ghost King nodded and said, "That's right. Speaking of which, God of Poison Senior is also considered a formidable character in our holy sect. Why is it that his disciples are all such characters? Really disappointing." Taoist Song Song smiled and said, "But that Qin Huiyan is indeed considered a good character, such a pity." Ghost King glanced at him and could not help but laughed out again. Everyone did not speak for the moment. Ghostly stood beside, quietly glanced at Ghost King, frowned. For some reason, he felt that Ghost King was behaving strangely today. But Ghostly's thought did not go too deep, because very quickly, in the small city ahead, which had just woken up in the morning, a heart-wrenching scream suddenly erupted. Very soon, numerous screams were heard everywhere. Among them, clearly someone filled with terror shouted, "Evil beasts! The evil beasts are here!" Piercing and cruel screams were heard from the southern side of the small city. In the distant peaceful plains, suddenly waves of smoke and dust rose, as if charging warriors formed into a magnificent army, charging over with unstoppable force. That from far to near, mixed with excited roars and shouts, carrying a thirst for blood swarmed over, the 5 Ghost King sect disciples standing at the other end of the small city all rose into the air, flew towards the small city. Chapter 287. Flying near. Even though they had seen countless scenes, but the scene before them still made their countenance change slightly. Innumerable monsters and mutated beasts roared and howled out from the smoke and dust on the plains, huge bodies, agile bodies, sharp teeth and claws, in the morning light, exuded a thick sense of death. And on the other side, the residents in the small city were panicking, frantically running around, but no one knew where to go which was safe. The intensive running sounds got closer and louder, finally reached a deafening point. More and more beasts surged over from the south, charging towards that small city. The ancient road on the plains and the wide land on both sides of the road had already become the paradise of these beasts. The red-eyed beasts surrounded the small city with their deafening roars, The pitiful people who did not manage to escape into the city in time, in a blink were engulfed by the dust stirred up by the beasts. In the gray mist, blood flashed, screams were heard, and then disappeared. And above the city walls, some of the people who still had the will to live desperately pulled up the drawbridge of the city gates, temporarily blocking these ferocious and cruel beasts outside the city. And then the beasts seemed to swarm in from the south endlessly, surrounding this small city. The 5 people in the sky all inhaled a breath of cold air. In the distant wilderness, a shrill cry was heard. That sound was sharp and ear-piercing. With some sonorous sounds, it seemed to penetrate through the smoke and dust and rushed over. Ghost King's countenance changed, quietly said, "It's here, should be this evil beast. Everyone be careful. Act according to the original plan." The rest of them nodded slightly and then dispersed. Only Ghost King stayed in the air, glanced a few more times at the direction of the shrill cry. A trace of a smile appeared on his lips, and then his body flew up, merged into the clouds, and disappeared. As that shrill cry became louder and louder, the numerous beasts that surrounded the small city raised their heads and cried out at the same time. All kinds of ear-piercing sounds mixed together, mixed with the stench of the beasts and the indistinct smell of blood in the wind, made one's hair stand. In the smoke and dust, there was a sudden roar, and the scream stopped abruptly. In the air, there was a flash of light, and a huge, tiger-like monster jumped out of the smoke and dust. From afar, this monster beast looked like a tiger, and even its forehead seemed to have a faint king character. However, its body was many times larger than an ordinary tiger. It had sharp teeth and claws, and the fur on its body was colorful. The most peculiar thing was that its tail was extremely long, and it seemed to be much longer than its body. Compared to it, the ferocious beasts around it were like kittens and puppies. Ghostly, who was hiding outside the city, frowned, quietly said, "Chu-Wu." Note 1. The small city that was surrounded by the demonic beasts was only a small city. When this 5 to 6 zhang tall demonic beast stood in front of the city, its head almost reached the top of the city. The thick stench of blood blew over with the wind. The people on top of the city walls were either scared out of their wits or scared out of their wits, ran away like their lives depended on it. Chu-Wu growled twice. An ominous glint flashed in its eyes. It suddenly made a shrill cry, raised its thick front legs, and directly smashed down on the city gate. The sharp tiger claws easily pierced through the thick wooden gate. Before the civilians who were desperately trying to defend the gate realized what was going on, a few of them had already been pierced by the huge tiger claws. The rest of the people were terrified and scattered in all directions. Chu-Wu howled loudly. Its claws smashed down continuously. Boom, boom, boom. After a few loud sounds, the broken city gate collapsed. The entire city in that instant was filled with cries, and excited roars were heard from outside the city. Numerous ferocious beasts swarmed in. In a blink of an eye, a reign of terror. Chu-Wu opened the city gate for the other beasts, but it itself did not go in to kill. It seemed that it was disdainful to do such things, and at this moment, it seemed to have discovered something. Its tiger head turned. Its huge body slowly turned over. Its nose kept sniffing the air, as if trying to ascertain something. Just when Chu-Wu was hesitating to search, suddenly from the city wall in front of it, a loud sound was heard. A part of the city wall abruptly split open. Taoist song broke out from the hole and appeared right in front of Chu-Wu. A yellow sword light in his hand with lightning speed struck Chu-Wu's chest. Chu-Wu made an earth-shattering roar. Its entire huge tiger body flew backwards, but Taoist Song was after all a famous figure for many years and was also from the world's #1 sect Qingyun. How could his skills be ordinary? Although Chu-Wu flew backwards, but a sound like tearing silk was heard. A 4-chi-long enormous wound was slashed open on Chu-Wu's chest. If it was any other ordinary beast, this wound would have killed on the spot, but Chu-Wu was obviously different from the surrounding ordinary beasts. As one of the 13 evil beasts under the evil beast, its vitality and evil powers were far from the other ordinary beasts. Although blood was gushing out of his chest like a fountain, Chu-Wu did not even look at it. He roared furiously, and in a blink of an eye, he pounced over. Looking at his movements, he was not any slower than before he was injured. Taoist Song's countenance changed slightly. His figure flashed and avoided Chu-Wu's sharp claws, steered his sword swiftly away from the beasts, flew towards the north of the city. Chu-Wu roared loudly. Its eyes looked like it was about to spit fire, pursued relentlessly. Taoist Song Song initially wanted to swiftly fly to that nameless hill and then join forces with the others to eliminate this beast. Unexpectedly, after flying for less than half of the distance, he felt the sound of the wind behind him. The fishy hot air was almost at the back of his head. Taoist Song Song was shocked, hurriedly turned back to look, was shocked. This Chu Wu's speed was unbelievably fast after being injured. Its four legs like flying, like a gust of wind and lightning. It actually caught up with Taoist Song Song, who was flying on his sword. Chu Wu, who was behind Taoist Song Song, did not hesitate. With a loud roar, opened its mouth and bit down. Looking at that stance, if it did not bite Taoist Song Song into two, it would not be able to dispel its hatred. But Taoist Song Song, after all, had trained for many years. He did not panic at the critical moment. His body sank down abruptly. In a hair's breadth, he narrowly avoided the fate of dying in the tiger's mouth. Even so, Taoist Song Song also broke out in cold sweat. Following which, Taoist Song Song did not dare to be careless. He rode the celestial sword up and down, left and right, making Chu Wu unable to run in a straight line to unleash its incredible speed. Only then did he manage to reach the front of the maple forest on that small hill, and at this moment, Chu had already been lured away from that group of countless beasts. Watching Taoist Song Song, with a sound, his figure disappeared into the red maple forest. Chu Wu was even more furious, charged straight into the forest. But the moment it stepped into the clearing in front of the maple forest, suddenly Mr. Ghost's black figure appeared, quietly chanting an incantation. The next moment his black clothes floated up. A strange spiritual power slowly emanated from his body. Chu Wu abruptly halted its steps. The huge momentum caused it to slide forward for several zhongs, knocked down a dozen maple trees. But Chu Wu did not care about the forest below, or even Taoist Song Song, who had just disappeared. In its eyes, there was only that black figure floating beside it, and the strange spiritual power emanating from his body. And this time, Chu Wu did not charge forward again. Its huge tiger head swung. With a loud roar, abruptly opened its mouth. 3 streams of black smoke floated out from its mouth, swiftly condensed into 3 ferocious skeletons in the air, brandished their fangs and claws, and pounced towards Mr. Ghost. Mr. Ghost's body shook slightly. This evil beast was not only ferocious and fast, it actually knew southern border shaman spells. It really could not be underestimated. But Mr. Ghost did not stop his spell to avoid Chu Wu's shaman skeletons. As expected, just when the 3 skeletons were about to reach him, figures flashed. Yuji and Ghostly flew out from both sides, blocked in front of Mr. Ghost. Yuji's hands intertwined, holding a strange seal, one palm forward and one backward, completely different from Central Plains Buddhism's seal. The next moment, a beam of silver light appeared in her palms, swiftly enlarged and blocked one of the skeletons. That skeleton, as if it was being burned, shook violently when it was about to charge over. Its entire body suddenly scattered. It was broken by Yuji's vermilion bird seal. And on the other side, Ghostly's face was indifferent. Facing the 2 ferocious skeletons, his right hand flipped. The soul-absorbing stick appeared in his hand, but this time he did not use the sinister orb as the head like usual. On the contrary, he strangely turned the black stick like stick over, using the green-black stick body forward, charged out. The 2 skeletons slashed down at the same time, but before they could reach 3 chi from the black stick, under Ghostly's strange spell, a red light suddenly shone around the black stick. The stick immediately glowed. Black gas surged up. It was even more ghastly than the 2 skeletons. In a blink, both sides collided. Ghostly's black stick, like cutting tofu, penetrated the 2 skeletons. Black gas surged. The next moment, the 2 skeletons opened their mouths, but could not make any sound. Quietly dissipated, the remaining black gas was also sucked in by the black stick. On Ghostly's stick, other than the ferocious sinister orb, the stick's original sinister orb, was the ancestor of these ghostly evil spells, and also the natural nemesis, when Vampire Demon used the skeleton formation to attack him when he was still Zhang Xiaofan. He suffered a great loss because of this. Chu Wu clearly did not expect these people to be able to break his shaman spells so easily. Couldn't help but was stunned, and at this moment, Mr. Ghost's spell was completed. Both of his arms suddenly shook. A red light descended from the sky. It was the hidden dragon cauldron which he had summoned. Instantly the sky turned dark red. Indistinctly there were bird cries and cow howls in the red light, the sounds mournful. The power seemed even stronger than before. The red light, like a curtain, descended, immediately enveloped Chu Wu within. Chu Wu felt as if there was a huge mountain pressing on its body in a blink, almost unable to breathe. But the southern border demon beasts had always been ferocious. Chu Wu was in a difficult situation and instead became even more furious, roaring and struggling with all its might. At this moment, a figure flashed on the hidden dragon cauldron. Ghost King descended from the sky. Like lightning flew down from the hidden dragon cauldron's red light. Chu Wu seemed to sense it. Furiously looked up, but Ghost King was already above its head. With a long howl, the red light trembled, dazzling. The outside could not see clearly what was happening inside. Indistinctly, Ghost King's figure could be seen flashing. Something suddenly appeared in his hand. Propitious air billowed, struck Chu Wu's head. Chu Wu's body shook violently, from head to toe. The next moment, the red light gradually calmed down. The mysterious thing in Ghost King's hand also disappeared, but Chu Wu's originally glowing force suddenly dimmed. Blood flowed out from the 7 orifices on the tiger's head. Ghost King gave a long laugh. His right hand suddenly pierced down, stabbed into Chu Wu's hard skull. Chu Wu let out an earth-shattering roar. His body swayed a few times and finally fell down, unable to withstand it. Note 1. Shanhai Jing. Hai Nabi I Jing. Chu Wu, Lin family country's rare beast, as big as a tiger, all 5 features, tail longer than the body, named Chu Wu. Riding on it could travel 1,000 miles in a day. Another note, Shun Emoji. Evil Beast Chapter. Chu Wu, Divine Continent southern border has a strange beast, shaped like a tiger, for 5 colors and a long tail, commanding hundreds of beasts, called the King of Hundreds of Beasts. Chapter 288. Qingyan Hill, Tong Tian Peak. The fragrance of tea rose in spirals, emanating from the spotlessly white teacups with green lids. The freshly brewed tea emitted wisps of white steam, drifting in the room. This was a secluded room in the rear hall of Crystal Hall. The current good faction's most powerful, most famous 3 masters were gathered in this room, leisurely sipping tea and discussing. The Qingyan disciples who were serving tea and water had quietly left, leaving only Reverend Daoxian, Puhong Master, and Yin Elon in the room. Reverend Daoxian was the first to speak, smiled, and said, "This tea is also our Qingyan Hill's local specialty. Although it is not considered rare, but it is considered fragrant and top quality. Both of you try it. What do you think?" Yin Elon put down the teacup in his hand, nodded, and said, "The fragrance lingers in the throat, seems to flow from the mouth to the stomach. It is indeed good tea." Reverend Daoxian smiled and said, "If Yin Senior Brother likes it, in the future after this demon beast calamity is over, bring some back to Funxiang Valley." Yin Elon smiled and nodded, said, "That's great. Reverend, you must keep your word." Both of them smiled at each other. Puhong Master instead chanted. Reverend Daoxian glanced at him, said, "Master, what is it?" Puhong Master sighed, said, "Actually, this poor monk also knows that facing such a calamity, one must maintain a calm state of mind. Only then can one calmly deal with it. Just that Buddhism is compassionate. Once I think of the common people in the world right now in dire straits, I can't help but feel anxious and lost my composure. Both of you please forgive me." Yin Elon's countenance changed slightly. A glint also flashed past Reverend Daoxian's eyes, but then his face also turned solemn. Looking at Puhong Master, Reverend Daoxian unhurriedly said, "Master is right. Since we call ourselves good faction, naturally we should take responsibility for the common people. Poor monk was rude just now." Puhong Master put his palms together and shook his head, quietly said, "What is Reverend saying? Just now I did not mean to blame Reverend." Yin Elon's countenance had already returned to normal, smiled and said, All right. Both of you are so genteel. Isn't it even more unbearable? Let's not talk nonsense. Quickly talk about the overall situation." Reverend Daoxian and Puhong Master both smiled. Reverend Daoxian nodded and said, "Yin Senior Brother is right. Actually today, I invited both of you here to discuss, is indeed because of this demon calamity. There seems to be a strange change. Actually today, I invited both of you here to discuss is indeed because of the demon beast calamity. There seems to be a strange change. Reverend Daoxian's face was solemn, said, "A few days ago I sent Xiao Yikai, Lin Jingyu, and other elite disciples out to investigate the situation of the demon beasts. In the end, they just rushed back last night and reported to me something unusual." Master looked at Reverend Duff, Reverend Daoxian Li Ling Master, he out and he of. Reverend Daoxian paused for a moment, then said, "According to Yikai's report, the numerous demon beasts that attacked Central Plains from the south have been marching straight to the north, killing along the way. But recently, for some reason, a large number of demon beasts suddenly stopped heading north, one after another heading towards the southwest direction, and the number of demon beasts heading north seems to be only about 40% of the original number." Yun Elon was silent for a moment, said, "Southwest direction, isn't that where the evil faction has always been most rampant?" Reverend Daoxian nodded and said, "That's right. Now the evil faction is divided into 3 branches. One Du Clan, Ghost King Sect, and Hehuan Sect are fighting endlessly. Although we do not know where their headquarters are, but from the clues and traces, it should be at the southwest. So that place has always been the evil faction's stronghold. And this time the demon beasts suddenly headed in that direction in large numbers. I wonder what is it for?" Puhong Master frowned and said, "Could it be that the demon beasts have already clashed with the evil faction and suffered some losses, so a large number of demon beasts went to support?" Reverend Daoxian's face was solemn, said, "Currently it is still not clear, but if it is so, it would be for the best. The demon beasts and the evil faction are both scourges. If they can fight it out, the common people will be fortunate." Yin Elon suddenly shook his head, said, "Both sect heads, I think it is not that simple." Reverend Daoxian glanced at him, said, "Oh, please enlighten us, Yin Valley Master." Yin Elon said, "You and I are very clear that the evil faction people have always been selfish. To say that they are fighting against the demon beasts for the common people, I think it is impossible." Reverend Daoxian and Puhong Master both nodded their heads at the same time, indicating their agreement. Yin Elon smiled and said, "On the contrary, with my understanding of the evil faction, they see that the demon beasts are so powerful now, not to mention being enemies with the demon beasts. Even if the demon beasts unintentionally hurt them, I'm afraid they would rather bear it in silence and willingly retreat, and let us good faction deal with these vicious demon beasts." Reverend Daoxian nodded and said, "That's right. Yin Valley Master is right, but now the demon beasts are indeed heading southwest in large numbers, with Valley Master's wise opinion. Why is that?" Yin Elon was silent for a moment. In a deep voice said, "Looking at the actions of the demon beasts entering the Central Plain for the past few days, they do not have a specific target. They're all killing along the way, heading all the way north. So this time the sudden change in large numbers. There must be something strange. It should be that the demon beasts near the southwest had suffered a great loss. Therefore, that evildoer called Beast Deity would mobilize a large number of troops towards the southwest. But in the southwest direction, other than the evil faction people, there are no other powerful figures. So I think, within the evil faction, there is some unusual movement." Puhong Master frowned, said, "Unusual movement? What is Valley Master referring to?" Yin Elon laughed, said, "This is not something I can know." Puhong Master could not help but smile, shook his head and said, "After talking for half a day, Yin Patron, aren't you saying it in vain?" For a moment the 3 of them laughed, but after a moment, Reverend Daoxian said, "Actually, for what I see, what Yin Senior Brother said might not be unreasonable. No matter what, now that the demon beasts are heading southwest in large numbers, the pressure in front of us has also lessened. At least it can buy us some time. Now that the common people are looking forward to us fervently, we also have to do something to let the world see." Yin Elon glanced at Reverend Daoxian, said, "Oh, could it be that Reverend wants us to take advantage of the fact that the demon beasts are not here, to go down the mountain and have a good fight?" Reverend Daoxian sternly said, "That's right. To get rid of one more demon beast, the world will suffer less. Such a responsibility our good faction is naturally duty-bound." Puhong Master quietly chanted, A trace of mockery quietly flashed past Elon's eyes, but then sternly said, "What Reverend said is extremely right. Then we will listen to Reverend's arrangement. Our Funxiang Valley is willing to be the vanguard." Reverend Daoxian smiled and said, "With Yun Valley Master's intention, why worry that the demon beasts will not be defeated? But over at the southwest, I have pondered for a long time, feel that there is a great mystery in this matter. Although we cannot rashly intervene, but if we ignore it, it seems not appropriate." Puhong Master nodded and said, "That's right. Old Monk also thinks so. After all the demon beast calamity, scourge to the common people, what exactly is happening in the southwest, we must at least have an idea." Yun Elon said, "Since it is so, why don't we send a few highly skilled disciples, quietly go over and find out?" Reverend Daoxian nodded, said, "All right. It is decided then." At this moment, Yun Elon seemed to recall something, suddenly said to Reverend Daoxian, "Oh right, there is one more thing. I would like to ask Reverend for a favor." Reverend Daoxian was surprised, said, "Yun Valley Master is too polite. What is it? Just say it." Yun Elon smiled and said, "I heard that your esteemed Small Bamboo Valley disciple Lu Sweki has recently been punished to face the wall and reflect on her actions at Small Bamboo Valley Full Moon Platform. After I heard it, I felt really uneasy, and—" He smiled and said, "That wretched disciple of mine these few days has been coming over to beg me, saying that he is not willing to implicate Miss Lu to be punished because of our request. Moreover, now that the demon beasts are wreaking havoc on the world, is the best time to use people, and Miss Lu is also an outstanding disciple of Qing Yun. Why don't Reverend give me face and temporarily let Miss Lu be exempted from punishment?" Reverend Daoxian sighed, said, "It is all my fault for not disciplining her strictly. Let Yun Valley Master laugh at me." Yun Elon smiled and said, "What is Reverend saying? It is just my wretched disciple's wishful thinking, and these matters between the younger generation, we might as well not bother about it in the future." After speaking, he laughed out loud. Reverend Daoxian pondered for a moment, said, "Since Yun Valley Master is personally pleading for her, I definitely have to give this face. How about this? I will let Sweki come back today, and, at the same time, choose a few disciples to go with her to the southwest to investigate. It can be considered as redeeming for her crime." Yun Elon revealed a trace of smile, said, "Ah, what a coincidence. I was just thinking of letting my disciple Li Sun also go to the southwest to gain experience." Reverend Daoxian glanced at him, indifferently said, "Then let them go together." Yun Elon laughed, cupped his fists, and said, "Then I will first thank Reverend on behalf of my disciple." Reverend Daoxian looked away, picked up the teacup from the table in front of him, slowly took a sip. The expression in his eyes changed, slowly said, "Valley Master is too polite." Southwest Venomous Serpent Valley. This huge valley was surrounded by dense ancient forests. Most of the year, in the early morning and dusk, there would be miasma-like poisonous fog rising from the forest. It was actually the accumulation of poisonous gas from the countless venomous snakes that lived in this valley. Nobody could say for sure why there were so many venomous snakes in this valley. The numbers were so many that they were everywhere on the trees and under the ground. Only in the valley where Wandu clan residences were located, because of Wandu clan's secret method, these venomous snakes did not dare to come near. And these venomous snakes that covered the mountains and plains also became Wandu clan's natural barrier and inexhaustible poison treasure house. Right now, it was the early morning of the day. In the dense forest of the Venomous Serpent Valley, faint colored fog could be seen rising indistinctly. It looked like the morning fog at the beginning of the morning, but if an ignorant person went near, in short, while he would be poisoned to death by the venomous venom and finally buried in the snake's mouth. And on normal days, other than these venomous snakes guarding the valley, Wandu clan disciples would always patrol, guarding against external enemies. Just that these few days, for some reason, these disciples who were usually on guard did not come out. It seemed like the internal strife in Wandu clan had already reached a white-hot stage. Pop, a soft sound, a small stone rolled over, on the only path outside the Venomous Serpent Valley, at the same time already dilapidated, overgrown with weeds, jumped twice on the ancient path, rolled into the bushes beside and disappeared. Then, following light footsteps, Three tall but strange wild beasts appeared on the path. All had wolf heads, but their bodies were the usual tiger and leopard forms, looking extremely strange. The three beasts looked very cautious, their noses constantly twitching, sniffing something in the air, slowly approaching the venomous serpent valley. And the valley was quiet, as if completely unguarded against the arrival of these three uninvited guests. Suddenly, one of the beasts' wolf heads shook, seemed to have discovered something, following which it made a low growl. The other two beasts immediately stopped, looked at the strongest and tallest beast standing in the middle. An ominous glint flashed in the wolf-headed beast's eyes. Its nose kept sniffing, but it did not walk into the venomous serpent valley. Instead, it slowly walked towards the dense undergrowth beside the ancient path outside the valley. A faint smell of blood slowly emanated from the undergrowth. The beast growled in a low voice, stepped into the undergrowth. Looking from the outside, the beast's body kept moving, seemed to be searching for something in the undergrowth. After a while, the undergrowth shook again. That sturdy beast leapt out from the undergrowth, back into the ancient path, and in its mouth, it was biting a strange thing. That looked like a long whip, also like some monster's tail. The fur on it had already started to rot, its color dulled, constantly emitting a bloody smell. The other two beasts roared at the same time, clearly shocked and angry, a fierce glint flashing in their eyes. The beast that picked up the tail placed the thing on the ancient path, suddenly raised its head and howled. That sound like a wolf's howl, mournful and sharp, straight to the clouds. The next moment, that beast picked up the tail again, ignoring the other two beasts. Its four legs like flying, swiftly ran back, leaving the venomous serpent valley. And after the two beasts howled a few times, suddenly exerted their strength, dashed into the valley. Entering the valley, the ancient path became even more winding and narrow. Moving forward, both sides of the forest were densely covered with thistles and thorns, and it floated a faintly discernible, slightly colored mist. The monsters charged forward. Looking at the way they were gnashing their teeth, if anyone appeared in front of them at that moment, they would be torn to pieces immediately. The colorful mist gently drifted, gradually gathered in the forest. The two beasts howled again and again, without even looking, dashed straight in. At the start, there was nothing unusual, but these two beasts, for some reason, their howls gradually became softer, running slower and slower. After a while, their bodies started to tremble. Seeming to know something was wrong, the two beasts stopped, turned their heads with difficulty, wanted to leave the forest, but before they could take a few steps, they had already collapsed. In an instant, blood flowed from the 7 orifices on their faces. It looked like they would not survive. In the mountain forest, hissing sounds that made one's hair stand on end rang out at the same time from both near and far. They all surged towards this place, and in less than a moment, countless snakeheads appeared from the bushes and treetops. With hissing sounds, poisonous snakes of various sizes crawled over one after another. And just when these venomous snakes were happily fighting for food, suddenly, many of the snakes stopped, raised their heads warily, and then turned towards the entrance of the venomous serpent valley. Chapter 289. Far away from that desolate ancient path, there seemed to be a faint, low rumble of war drums. The entire earth slowly started to tremble. Strange sounds like thousands of troops and horses advancing came from the endless distance. In the valley in the early morning, suddenly fell into a deathly silence. Who, letting out a long breath of resentment, God of Poison's eldest disciple Fanxiong fiercely swung his hand, flung the body of a Wandu clan disciple whose skull was cracked by him to one side. The body flew through the air. With a thud, it crashed onto the offering table in front of the morning hall and fell down. As if there was a demon sneering in the unseen world, or perhaps to make a memorial for God of Poison, this evil sect head who had killed people like scything flax. Inside and outside the morning hall, where God of Poison's coffin was. Right now, blood flowed like a river. Bodies of Wandu clan disciples were everywhere. The thick smell of human blood drifted in the air. Right now, God of Poison's 3 disciples, Fanxiong, Chengwuya, and Duan Rushan. The 3 sects had been fighting for several days. Other than some highly skilled leaders, most of the ordinary Wandu clan disciples were already dead or injured, and these few days of fighting made these 3 people, who were fighting for power, red-eyed, almost into madness. On the offering table in the morning hall, the box containing the seal was still quietly lying there, coldly watching everything. As if tired of killing, the fighting inside and outside the morning hall gradually subsided, but the tense atmosphere of mutual hostility instead became even more intense. Third brother Duan Rushan, escorted by four strange-looking elders, a fierce glint flashed in his eyes, looked at Fan Xiong and Cheng Wuya, sneered and said, "I say, two senior brothers, you are still not willing to give up, other than a few old fellows beside you. Who else can take it out?" Fan Xiong and Cheng Wuya looked at each other, saw a trace of despair in each other's scarlet eyes. Ever since that night on the seventh day of God of Poison's death, strange noises were heard in the morning hall. The three sects who were already on guard immediately rushed into the morning hall, afraid that if they were one step late, the seal would be stolen by others. In that chaotic situation, countless people rushed into the morning hall. Naturally, they all thought that the other party had long since planned to break the agreement and come to snatch the sect master's seal. In just a few words, they had already started fighting. And until now, the result of the three sects' battle finally became clear. The third Duan Rushan, who had always been weaker, with a strong power, gradually suppressed Fan Xiong and Cheng Wuya. At this moment, other than by Duzi, Vampire Demon, Elder Duanmu, and less than 10 people standing behind the two of them, they had no more chips in their hands. And Duan Rushan not only had the Poison Clan 4 elders as his guards, there were at least 100 more people in the open and in the dark, among which there were many highly skilled people. Wandu Clan's strong power, actually 60% of it was in Duan Rushan's hands. More than before the battle, it was really out of their expectations. Seeing that the defeat was already decided, Fan Xiong and Cheng Wuya's eyes were filled with unwillingness, but in the end, they could not say anything. Seeing his two senior brothers, Duan Rushan could not help but laugh out loud. He had always had two overbearing senior brothers above him, and below him, his teacher god of poison doted on that Qinwen even more, only he had always been ignored. After enduring for so many years, he could finally hold his head high. How could he not be wild with joy? Duan Rushan arrogantly walked forward. The Poison Clan 4 elders guarded around him. Fan Xiong and Cheng Wuya watched helplessly as he walked to the front of the offering table, stood in front of that box. One clenched his fists tightly, the other gritted his teeth. Obviously, he was extremely furious. But their anger right now, in Duan Rushan's eyes, was undoubtedly the victor's favorite look. He even felt that it was because of this moment where he was above everyone else that he did not waste his life. Duan Rushan laughed out loud, his attitude arrogant, proudly stretched out his hand, took that green box in his hand. Fan Xiong and Cheng Wuya both made low growls at the same time, stepped forward, but the 4 elders immediately turned and looked at them. At the same time, Duan Rushan's men surrounded them. Both of their eyes looked like they were about to spit fire, stared at that box in Duan Rushan's hand. Duan Rushan's laughter was even more complacent, contentedly twisted the lock, opened the box. The bottom of the box was covered with golden silk. In the middle of the silk was a piece of dark brown small seal. On the seal was carved a lifelike little snake. Although it was not turned over, but everyone present, including Duan Rushan, knew. Below that small seal was engraved 4 words, a god seal of 10,000 poison. Duan Rushan arrogantly looked around. His eyes even lingered on Fan Xiong and Cheng Wuya's faces for a moment. After fully enjoying the joy of victory, Duan Rushan smiled. Although this smile, because of the blood on his face, looked strange and ferocious, he picked up the god seal of 10,000 poison, turned it over. He wanted to take a good, careful look at this symbol that represented the highest authority in Wandu clan. At that moment, other than Fan Xiong and Cheng Wuya's angry panting, there was no other sound. Looking at it, the new generation of Wandu clan leader was about to be born. Suddenly, just when everyone held their breath, Duan Rushan suddenly made a heart-wrenching howl. The box in his hand and that crucial god seal of 10,000 poison fell to the ground. Everyone was shocked and looked at him. The next moment, they were all dumbstruck. The arrogant Duan Rushan right now was trembling all over. His face was completely drained of blood, especially his 2 hands, in a blink of an eye, had turned into an extremely strange deep black color. The next moment, a low sound of wings flapping was heard from his hands. A strange flying insect flew out from between his fingers. Everyone present were senior figures in Wandu clan. although that strange insect speed was extremely fast, but almost everyone could see it clearly. Baidu Zi was the first to exclaim, "Seven-tailed centipede. That is the seven-tailed centipede." The voice was like a soul-shaking howl, stunned everyone. Everyone looked at Duan Rushan, saw his body trembling more and more violently. An old man next to him wanted to pull, but his hand only slightly touched his clothes. Suddenly his body shook. With a loud cry he flew out. The next moment his right hand was black. Blood-sucking demon who was standing at a distance, his pupils constricted, said hoarsely, "Rotten flesh moss." That poisoned old man exclaimed loudly. Another old man next to him, without even thinking, with a loud roar, picked up a broken chair leg that had fallen beside him, chopped down towards his right hand. With his profound skills, that chair leg was like a blade unstoppable, forcibly chopped off the poisoned old man's right arm. That old man immediately threw the chair leg away, as if afraid that if he held it for a moment longer, his own hand would also suffer the same fate. The chair leg danced in the air. Everyone dodged frantically. Right now, Duan Rushan's face was already black. Everyone could clearly see his two completely black hands. With a sound, the skin split open. What flowed out was actually already black blood. The next moment, this hair-raising sound of piu, piu, piu was heard incessantly. Duan Rushan, who was poisoned by the world's two most venomous poisons, his skin and flesh exploded. Black blood splattered everywhere. He slumped to the ground. After struggling for a while, he no longer moved. Fan Xiong stared blankly at this junior brother who was still savage a moment ago, but now already dead, suddenly turned and loudly shouted, "Qin Huiyin, you treacherous beast, get out here." Everyone immediately realized rotten flesh moss was extremely poisonous. It was one of the world's most poisonous things. Even in Wandu clan, only the god of poison alone could use it. Fan Xiong, Cheng Wuya, Duan Rushan, the three of them were restricted by their cultivation and could not use it. And the seven-tailed centipede was even more extremely poisonous and rare. Only the god of poison kept it close to him. This time the two great poisons appeared at the same time, and it was in the 1,000 poison seal small box. Without asking, it must be Qin Huiyin who deceived everyone and secretly poisoned it. For a moment, everyone in the morning hall was in danger. Everyone quietly looked around, afraid that Qin Huiyin's figure would suddenly appear beside them. Duan Rushan's death was too horrifying. No one was not shocked and frightened. At this moment, no one dared to even breathe loudly. Only at Duan Rushan's body. The drops of black blood slowly dripped down. When it touched the ground, it made a slight hissing sound, forcibly burning a small hole. In a blink, the body was surrounded by small holes. It could be seen how strong the poison was. Hee. What is it? Two senior brothers, various elders. We haven't seen each other for only a few days. It's rare that everyone misses me so much. A calm voice suddenly was heard from outside the morning hall. Everyone was shocked and looked out. Qin Huiyin had changed his clothes, removed the hemp morning clothes, changed into his usual clothes, with a smile on his face, slowly walked in. And those with sharp eyes had already seen, on his shoulder, a small strange insect. It was the seven-tailed centipede. Fan Xiong hatefully said, "You poisoned it?" Qin Huiyin at this moment seemed to regard everyone as nothing, swaggeringly walked forward, came to Duan Rushan's body, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, stretched out his hand, and picked up that extremely poisonous god seal of all poison. Fan Xiong and Cheng Wuya's eyes shrunk. Cheng Wuya sneered and said, "Good. Little junior brother, the three of us have really belittled you." Qin Huiyin smiled and said, "Second senior brother must be joking. Actually, with the three senior brothers' strength, to take junior brother's life is as easy as turning one's hand. Junior brother actually did not dare to resist. Just that before teacher died, teacher repeatedly exhorted, said that now Ghost King sect, Hehuan sect, are all eyeing us like tigers waiting for prey. And the three senior brothers are not up to much. He told me that I must accept the position of head, to prevent Wandu clan's several hundred years of foundation from being destroyed in a day. Junior brother was raised by teacher since young. Teacher's kindness is deep, and I dare not disobey. So I could only use a small trick and let the three senior brothers suffer." Fan Xiong angrily said, "Hey, you think you will definitely win now. Let me tell you, the first one I kill is you." After speaking, he turned and called out to Cheng Wuya, Lao This kid is too vicious. Let's first join forces to kill this person, and then we will divide the world equally. Cheng Wuya immediately said, Good, let's go. In the midst of the shout, the two of them were about to rush up, and by doozy, Vampire Old Demon and the rest who were following behind them were about to follow when Qin Wen indifferently said, Elders, you have all seen it now. My few senior brothers are really not up to much if you all want to kill me. Not to mention that I have the seven-tailed centipede and rotten flesh moss, whether you all can win me or not. Even if you all join forces to kill me, following these two trash, do you think your future days will be easy? Can you win Ghost King's sect and He Huan's sect? Can you escape from those good faction people's encirclement and annihilation? By doozy, Vampire Old Demon, Elder Duanmu, and the rest stopped in shock. The two great poisons that Qin Wen used on Duan Rushan. Only those who had mastered Wandu clan's poison scripture could use it, although they had been in Wandu clan for many years, but they were still unable to reach that stage. In their hearts, they were already very wary of Qin Wen, who looked young. Now that they heard Qin Wen's words, for a moment they hesitated and did not move forward. And many of those who followed Duan Rushan would not listen to Fan Xiong and Cheng Wuya's orders. Right now, most of them looked at each other, not knowing what to do. Qin Wen looked at the crowd, smiled, and said, Everyone, I guarantee that as long as I take over the position of sect leader, I will definitely let bygones be bygones. How everyone was in the sect before, I will definitely treat you all well. Under Fan Xiong and Cheng Wuya's angry and anxious eyes, the crowd looked at each other for a long time, and then Baidu Zi was the first to retreat. After a while, Vampire Old Demon, Elder Duanmu, and the four elders of Poison Clan also slowly walked to the side, leaving only Qin Wen, Fan Xiong, and Cheng Wuya, the three senior and junior brothers, standing in the field. Fan Xiong's face revealed a look of despair, knew that the situation was hopeless. Cheng Wuya's face was even more ashen. Qin Wen still maintained a faint smile on his face, but in his heart it was hard to quell the hatred. Right now, what he hated was not the two senior brothers who were like dying struggling, but Taoist Song Song. Originally, he had already planned to let the three senior brothers kill each other, but it would not be such a large-scale battle. As long as these three senior brothers were eliminated, he would naturally be able to take over Wandu clan's power. Unexpectedly that night, Taoist Song Song suddenly interfered, ignited the three sects' dispute into a big chaotic battle, forcefully turning Wandu clan's profound power into nothingness in the civil war. Qin Wen right now was both angry and sorrowful and regretful. He really wished he could split Taoist Song Song into two. But thinking was just thinking. Taoist Song Song was nowhere to be seen. Qin Wen could only silently endure. But no matter what, Qin Wen already had victory in his grasp. With a victorious smile, he looked at the two senior brothers, leisurely said, Two senior brothers, still not apologizing in front of teacher's spirit tablet. Chapter 290. Majestic Fox Mountain, Ghost King's sect headquarters. Jiji, Jiji. Xiao Hui's familiar cries rang out in the deep and serene tunnel. Ghost Li's figure walked out from the shadows. On his shoulder, Xiao Hui drank a few mouthfuls from that big wine bag and then cleverly tied the opening of the wine bag and hung it down. There was a slender long rope on the wine bag. Like a condom tied on the monkey's body, there was no fear of it dropping. Ghostly expressionless, walked forward. The direction was where Bai Yao was. Xiao Hui seemed a little sleepy, lying on his shoulder yawning. Majestic Fox Mountain was desolate. There were not many wild fruits after Xiao Hui returned. Most of the time, it could only steal some wine from the Ghost King sect cellar. After a few days of not seeing it, it seemed to have put on some weight. Ghostly walked slowly. On the way, he rarely met any Ghost King sect ordinary disciples. He frowned slightly. These few days, many of the Ghost King sect disciples were gathered. A few days ago, Ghost King personally led them out of the mountain. As for where they were going, he was not sure, and the strange thing was, this seemingly important matter. He as the vice sect leader did not know, and Yu-Ji, Mr. Ghost, who had followed Ghost King for many years, including Taoist Song Song, who had just joined Ghost King's sect, as well as many of the Ghost King sect elites that he knew, were all left at Majestic Fox Mountain. Ghost King so mysteriously led a group of people, but their strength was not even half of Ghost King's sex. Where exactly was he going? Ghostly was also puzzled. But Mr. Ghost, UG, and the rest all remained silent. Ghostly naturally would not speak, and what he was most concerned about was not where Ghost King was going or how important this matter was. To him, Bai Yao was always the first. And now, he very quickly came to the cold stone room. There was no one at the door. UG was also not here. Usually the place where she most often saw this mysterious girl was the cold stone room, but during this period of time, the atmosphere in Ghost King's sex seemed to be not right. The number of times she came here also decreased. Ghostly stood at the door for a while, composed himself, and then pushed the door open and walked in. After entering, he saw a white and slender figure standing beside Bai Yao. Ghostly was surprised. At first he thought it was UG, but then he realized UG was always dressed in black. This was not her. Sure enough, when the woman in front heard the stone door open and turn around, her face was not covered with a black veil. It was little white. Ghostly was slightly surprised. Ever since the great shaman failed to cast soul-calling lure, he left majestic Fox Mountain in grief and returned here. He had never seen Xiao Bai again. Although from a scene of Ghost King and Xiao Bai meeting, he more or less knew that Ghost King and Xiao Bai were old acquaintances, but he had no intention to ask about it. When Xiao Bai saw Ghostly, she was slightly startled. Then she smiled and said, "It's you." Ghostly, after all, had a period of friendship with Xiao Bai, and Xiao Bai had also given him pointers in saving Bai Yao. He still felt grateful, nodded, and said, "Hello." At this time, the monkey, Xiao Hui, on Ghostly's shoulder also excitedly called out to Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai smiled at Xiao Hui and then looked at Ghostly, said, "You are here to see Bai Yao?" Ghostly slowly walked up. Bai Yao's beautiful and peaceful face once again appeared before him. His voice gradually deepened, said, "Yes." Xiao Bai quietly watched this man sit down beside Bai Yao, and then looked at the body lying on the stone platform, motionless. She sighed softly, shook her head, and quietly left. In the stone room, only Ghostly was left facing Bai Yao. After an unknown period of time, the heavy stone door opened again. Ghostly slowly walked out from the cold stone chamber. Looking at him, he looked even more haggard. He had just walked a few steps when he suddenly stopped, not far from the stone room. Nine-tailed celestial fox's white figure was still patiently standing there. Xiao Bai looked at him, sighed, and said, "Seeing Bai Yao like that, you must be very upset. It must have been hard on you." Ghostly woodenly shook his head, said, "I am fine." Xiao Bai walked to him, patted his shoulder, quietly said, "Don't be discouraged. There is always hope." Ghostly's body shook. Turned to look at her, his mouth slightly agape, but Xiao Bai saw his expression, already smiled bitterly, and said, "Don't ask me. I also don't know what to do now." Ghostly's face immediately turned gloomy, quietly turned around, and was about to take a step when suddenly a wong sound rang in his head, felt the world spinning. Instantly his entire body felt cold. The icy cold energy in his meridians suddenly soared up. Ghostly's shock was no small matter. Right now, the icy cold energy in his body was the sinister orb that he was very familiar with, but in the past, especially after he had trained in the 3 volumes of Tian Shu True Wei, his skills had improved greatly. This icy cold energy had gradually been restrained by him and no longer caused any trouble. For some reason today, it suddenly exploded out like this. In a short while, under Xiao Bai's shocked gaze, Ghostly's face turned pale, looked like he was shrouded in a layer of frost, and within 3 chi of his body was gradually enveloped by a strange dark green light. Indistinctly, there was a ferocious bloodlust. Xiao Bai's face changed, just as she was about to help Ghostly up. When her hand came into contact with the dark green light, she immediately felt a surge of sucking demonic power rushing towards her. Xiao Bai frowned, retreated 3 steps. Only then was she able to avoid the demonic power. And Xiao Hui, who was lying on Ghostly's shoulder, also realized something was wrong, jumped off Ghostly's body and landed behind Xiao Bai, opened its 3 eyes wide, staring at its master in a daze. Ghostly's face revealed a pained expression. His sleeve suddenly moved, a cold air flashed past, the soul-devouring stick slid out. It did not land on the ground but floated in front of him, slowly rotating, as if using a strange and cold gaze, watching this man who had owned it for so many years. The flickering dark green light flickered. The air was filled with a strange atmosphere. Xiao Bai's face was pale, her brows tightly frowned, but this demonic power was actually emitted from Ghost Li's body. Even if she wanted to help Ghost Li and remove this demonic power, but the source was in Ghost Li's body. How could she do it? For a moment, Xiao Bai was also at a loss. Just when Ghost Li's face was turning paler and paler, looking like he could not even breathe, suddenly, a warm pure yang red light shot out from his chest, immediately reduced the cold demonic power by quite a bit. Ghost Li's countenance changed, struggled to sit down. His face instantly flashed with golden and green light at the same time. Under the two great good faction, true ways in his body at the same time, the pure yang fire of the inferno mirror became more and more vigorous, gradually suppressing this colding energy, but when Ghost Li completely recovered, it was already an hour later. Right now, Ghost Li was completely drenched. When he opened his eyes, he saw Xiao Bai's concerned eyes. Ghost Li smiled bitterly, but did not say anything, slowly stood up. Xiao Bai looked at him, quietly said, "Is it the sinister orb?" Ghost Li picked up the soul-devouring stick that had dropped on the ground, looked deeply at it, and then again kept it back into his sleeves. Xiao Bai's eyes twitched, suddenly stepped forward, said, "Don't think that if you don't say it others won't know. Now the sinister orb's evil power has already started to bite back at you. These 10 years, the energy channels and blood in your body, because of being in contact with this evil thing day and night, it has already turned cold and poisonous. Now you can luckily escape death. It is because your luck is good. You actually obtained one of the few magical weapons in this world that can contend against the sinister orb, the Inferno Mirror." But her face seemed to be desolate. Even her voice had become weathered. "But you have the confidence to escape a few times. Next time, can you escape?" Ghost Li had been standing there, his haggard face expressionless, quietly listening to Xiao Bai. After a long while, he softly said, "I don't have the confidence, but what can I do?" Xiao Bai bit her lips, angrily said, "Don't play dumb with me. You don't know? Now the only way is to immediately discard this evil thing, and then bring the Inferno Mirror to a place of extreme yang, and use the earth fire to stimulate the Inferno Mirror's pure yang into your body. This is the only way for you to survive." Ghost Li looked at Xiao Bai for a long while, suddenly smiled. That smile looked unbelievably innocent, as if 10 years ago, that simple and honest Qingyan youth. Then he slowly turned his body, as if exhausted, slowly held onto the wall and walked away. Xiao Hui immediately ran toward its master, scurried up to Ghost Li's shoulder in 2 or 3 leaps. Xiao Bai stared blankly at that resolute and yet at the same time vulnerable figure, suddenly loudly said, "Do you want to die? In your heart you just want to die, right?" Ghost Li's body paused, but he did not turn back and did not speak. After a while, he continued to walk forward. Xiao Bai's voice was heard loudly from behind him. "Do you want to die? Stop dreaming. How many people do you owe in this world that you haven't paid off yet? Do you want to just die? Impossible. You don't want to listen to me, is it? Fine, you're powerful, then I will go myself. I will go find the incantation for 8 Savage Inferno Formation. Let you save yourself. You remember, Bai Yao is still lying in the cold stone room. Before she wakes up, even if you want to die is not up to you. Not up to you, not up to you, not up to you." In the long and serene tunnel, indistinct echoes were heard. Ghost Li's face was pale, his body slowly straightened, but in the end he did not turn back to look. Dense forest, serene valley. The morning in Venomous Serpent Valley was originally a peaceful place. Just that right now, the earth gradually trembled. The stench became heavier and heavier. The numerous venomous snakes that were swimming at the edge of the valley suddenly disappeared, as if indistinctly sensing something. These animals all went into hiding. A stretch of black smoke appeared at the far end of the valley, swiftly surged towards the direction of Venomous Serpent Valley. A thick and choking smell came from the air. The increasingly louder roars gradually converged into an earth-shattering roar. Closer and closer. Roar, ah, 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 ah. Shockingly, they were countless monsters. They were like evil ghosts and ferocious souls that had rushed out from the depths of hell. They had blood-red eyes, sharp fangs, and piercing roars as they pounced at him. All kinds of grotesque monsters and evil beasts gathered into an unstoppable torrent. In front of this ferocious torrent, no one could stop and survive. Even the trees on both sides of the road and the deafening roars were quickly swallowed by the torrent. Without hesitation, without pausing, this torrent rushed straight into the venomous Serpent Valley, like a black tide rushing into a green sea. In every corner of the forest, terrified venomous snakes were thrown out, desperately struggling in the torrent, but without exception, they were instantly drowned. Even the poisonous, colorful mist in the forest could not stop this terrible flood of beasts. A dozen of beasts at the front fell dead on the ground, but even more of them stepped on their companions' corpses and charged past. The strong hurricane in a blink blew the colorful poisonous mist away, drifting above the forest. In the black beast torrent, 4 or 5 powerful beasts that looked several times bigger than the ordinary monsters bared their fangs and brandished their claws as they led their men forward. And at the entrance of venomous Serpent Valley, there were still countless of monsters charging over. Chapter 291. The entire venomous Serpent Valley, right now, seemed to be trembling. Looking at it, it was like the end of the world. At the other end of venomous Serpent Valley, Ghost King, who was standing at a high place, breathed deeply, even though he had already seen the power of the demon beasts, but the scene before him still made his countenance change. He composed himself, pondered for a moment, and looked towards the forest north of venomous Serpent Valley. Under the morning sun, that forest indistinctly reflected the light. A trace of cold smile slowly surfaced on Ghost King's lips. One day, you will all know who will be the final victor. He roared in his heart. His face gradually hardened. Bai Yao was not here. Then, he will use the world to make up for it. He slowly turned around. Behind him in the dense forest were the Ghost King's sect disciples, densely packed in the forest, their fighting spirit high. Ghost King looked at these people in front of him, innumerable gazes focused on his face. At that moment, who knew what he was feeling? The slowly raised arm looked like it was becoming heavier. The distant roars and cries of terror seemed to be transmitted here. Ghost King's countenance suddenly changed again, and then he heavily swung down his raised arm. His arm like a knife, like a sharp blade chopping towards the world, cutting off the last warmth, tearing apart the dreams that once existed. The sound of the arm in the wind seemed like it was also pierced into the chest. Countless people behind him made blood-boiling cries, raised the sharp blades in their hands, and charged down the mountain, their clothes fluttering, the strong wind blowing. The trees in the forest swayed, seemed to be dancing wildly for this. Ghost King stood in the crowd, like a hard, cold rock. Motionless, he turned and looked towards the northern forest. There was also a commotion in the forest, gradually spreading out. Ghost King laughed. He suddenly laughed wildly in this sea of dying people. That laughter was so piercing, but no one dared to ask him a word or two. Only the morning sun that had just risen, still carrying with it a faint warmth, pounced towards this crazy mortal world. 7 days later, entrusted by Reverend Dao Xian, Puhong Master, and Yun Elon, and the other good faction leaders, a group of good faction disciples set off from Qingyun Hill, arrived at the southwest area. Due to the importance of this matter, the 3 great sects had all sent out their most capable disciples. As if it was a coincidence, these people had already known each other for a long time. Qingyun sect Xiao Yikai, Lin Jingyu and Lu Sueki, Tianyin Temple Fa Xiang and Fashion, Funxiang Valley Li Sun and Yanhong. The 7 of them, after departing from Qingyun Hill, were cautious along the way, traveling during the day and at night, trying their best to avoid conflict with the demon beasts on the way, hurried at full speed to the southwest area, hoping to find out why a large number of demon beasts suddenly gathered at this place. When these righteous disciples had just set out, although they knew that this journey was extremely dangerous, for the sake of the common people, not a single one of them had any thoughts of retreating. But on the 7th day after their journey, everyone had turned pale, kept silent all day and night, including Xiao Yikai, who was the most eloquent, Fa Xiang behind him, and even Li Sun, who had been wanting to talk to Anan, were all silent. In a journey of 1,000 miles, the further south one went, the more desperate the situation would be. Either the entire village or the entire city was littered with corpses, ghastly white bones, or one after another the villages and cities were deserted, the fertile lands turned into scorched earth. Nobody knew. Why did these demon beasts still set fire? Why were they so cruel and bloodthirsty? Just like nobody knew. When would this catastrophe end? The ghostly cries seemed to echo in the wilderness of the South forever, narrating the sad and miserable past. After entering the Southwest area, the group became even more cautious, but right now they were facing a huge problem. Firstly, they could not find the local residents. All of them had either fled to the north before the demon beast came, or had already died tragically in this catastrophe. Therefore, these good faction disciples had no way to ask the locals about the movements of these demon beasts. And on the other hand, most of the demon beasts could not communicate with humans, even if they took the risk to capture a few demon beasts, but most of them were struggling and roaring. How would they be able to get any information? Helplessly, after a discussion, they could only follow Xiao Yikai's suggestion. Take the risk and secretly follow the demon beasts. Wherever there were more demon beasts gathered, they would go there to see what exactly these demon beasts were up to. As such, they followed in the southwest area for 3 days and 3 nights. In between, they were almost discovered by some demon beasts with keen senses, smell, and hearing. Fortunately, Xiao Yikai, Fa Xiang, Lin Jingyu, etc. were extremely intelligent. Every time at the critical moment of life and death, they managed to escape unscathed. But even so, they still did not find anything. Just when they were starting to feel discouraged, by accident, they found an evil faction disciple who had already gone mad in a forest. Under their careful questioning, or it could be said under patient coaxing, they gradually found out that the demon beast's large-scale invasion into the southwest this time was actually for a great battle with the evil faction, and the result of the battle was the demon beast's overwhelming victory, the once arrogant and insufferably arrogant evil faction. 3 great branches were almost completely annihilated in this battle. This news immediately made everyone dumbstruck, and among the crowd, Lu Sueki, who was standing furthest away, her face was especially pale. Looking at this pitiful person who was curled up into a ball, incessantly muttering "monster, monster," from time to time suddenly trembling, screaming in fright, the 7 good faction people's hearts were shrouded in a heavy shadow. Xiao Yikai coughed once, looked at Fa Xiang, said, "Fa Xiang's senior brother, now we have a general understanding of the situation. What do you think we should do?" Fa Xiang frowned tightly, glanced at that pitiful person curled up on the ground, sighed and said, "Umitba, sin sin." After a pause, Fa Xiang slowly said, "Everyone, actually the purpose of our trip, is now more or less known. Little monk thinks, why don't we first return to the mountain, report to the few teachers about the current situation?" "No." Suddenly, a cold voice was heard from the side. Everyone was stunned. The person who spoke was the most reticent Lu Sueki. Fa Xiang was somewhat surprised, said, "Lu Junior sister, do you have any other opinion? Please speak." Lu Sueki's face was still very pale, but her voice was extremely calm, lightly said, "Everything that we know now is from this evil sect disciple who has already gone mad from fright, and when he was speaking just now, he was incoherent, repeating over and over again. Many of the places were our own guesses. If just because of this, we think that we have completed the task that the various teachers instructed, I think it is not appropriate." Fa Xiang was silent. Everyone looked at each other. After a moment, Fa Xiang nodded and said, "That's right. Lu Junior sister is right. Little monk was too impatient just now." Xiao Yikai pondered for a moment, said, "Lu Junior sister is right. But these days we have been investigating in the southwest area day and night. There is not the slightest clue. Don't tell me we still have to continue investigating like this?" Lu Sueki's lips twitched, but did not speak, obviously facing the current dilemma. She also could not think of any good solution. But at this moment, Li Sun, who had been looking at Lu Sueki from time to time, suddenly stepped forward, said, "I have an idea. Maybe there is some hope." Everyone was shocked. Even Lu Sueki looked at Li Sun a few more times. Fa Xiang joyfully said, "Really, Li's senior brother, please speak." Li Sun inhaled deeply, forced himself not to look at Lu Sueki, said, "I listened carefully to this madman's words just now. Heard him mentioned a place several times, called Venomous Serpent Valley. Not sure if everyone noticed it." Xiao Yikai nodded, said, That's right, I also noticed it. I have heard of this venomous serpent valley before. Legend has it that it is a valley deep in the southwest here. Countless venomous snakes gather in it. The forest also has highly toxic miasma. People will die immediately. No one has ever dared to enter this forest. After a long time, no one knew the exact location of this valley. Lin Jingyu suddenly said, "Could it be that Li's senior brother thinks that the great battle between the demon beasts and the evil faction was carried out in this legendary venomous serpent valley?" Li Sun nodded, resolutely said, "That's right. Based on my deduction, the battle was carried out in Venomous Serpent Valley. And even more, I think that this Venomous Serpent Valley may be one of the evil faction's 3 great branches' headquarters. As long as we can find that place, naturally we will be able to find out if what this madman said is true." Yan Hong, who had been silent at this moment, suddenly said, "But senior brother, it has already been many days. Let's not talk about whether we can find that Venomous Serpent Valley. Even if we find it, the scenery there may not be the same." Li Sun coldly said, "Junior sister, don't tell me you have forgotten. Those cruel demon beasts will indeed set fire to eat people, but after setting fire, there will also be ruins. The demon beasts eat people, but they do not eat bones." Everyone's countenance changed. Yan Hong's face turned even paler, suddenly made a nauseating motion. Obviously, the various tragedies that they had seen along the way, this girl had gradually reached her psychological limit. Li Sun sighed, did not speak anymore. Fei Xiong and Fashion at the same time quietly chanted. Xiao Yikai shook his head, walked over to Yan Hong, quietly comforted her, until Yan Hong's expression gradually calmed down. He then turned and slowly walked to that evil faction disciple who was still trembling on the ground, squatted down. "Do you know where is the Venomous Serpent Valley?" Xiao Yikai tried to make his voice gentler, sounded amiable, but that evil faction disciple's body trembled, buried his head even lower, did not say a word. Xiao Yikai asked 3 times in succession, but that evil faction disciple seemed to be deaf, did not have any reaction. Xiao Yikai slowly stood up, looked at the crowd. No one spoke. Xiao Yikai sighed, said what to do. Li Sun, who was standing beside, frowned, suddenly strode over to that evil faction disciple, picked him up, loudly asked, "Where's the place where those monsters kill people?" That evil faction disciple's body shook greatly. In that instant, an expression of extreme fear surfaced on his face, opened his mouth wide, and after a moment made an extremely sharp scream. But Li Sun's heart, like stone, held on tightly and did not let go, loudly shouted, "The place where those monsters kill and eat people, where is it?" The evil faction disciple, who was in deep fear, was trembling, his teeth chattering, his eyes filled with fear, but his head involuntarily looked towards the north. Li Sun's gaze froze, anxiously said, "In the north, isn't it?" That evil faction disciple's head suddenly tilted. His entire body slumped down. Everyone was shocked and quickly went up to check. The person's pupils were dilated, probing the tip of his nose. There was no breath. He was actually dead. Li Sun slowly put down the body, stood up, facing the north. Everyone followed his gaze, that stretch of forest in the distance. Although it was a clear day, but there seemed to be a blood-colored cloud shrouding it. Chapter 292. Majestic Fox Mountain, where the evil sect Ghost King sect headquarters was located, shrouded in an austere atmosphere. The originally powerful sect suddenly lost more than half of its manpower. No matter to any powerful family in the world, it was also an extremely heavy blow. So many hot-blooded disciples, with high morale, to fight, and when they returned, there was only Ghost King alone, bathed in blood. An unshakable shadow appeared on everyone's faces and hearts in Majestic Fox Mountain. No one knew who would be the next opponent of those cruel and ferocious demon beasts. After Ghost King returned, he immediately went into seclusion to recuperate. No one dared to ask him, but they did not have to wait for long. Very soon, the news came back one after another. The matter also gradually became clear in this Southwest War. The evil sect, 3 big sect, for the first time joined forces to fight against the demon beasts. Although why the 3 sects would secretly ally or have other plans, other than Ghost King, most likely no one else knew. And the result of this war could be said to be the evil sect's most tragic defeat in 1,000 years. Not to mention Ghost King's sect losing more than half of their manpower. Wandu clan first suffered heavy losses in the sect's internal strife, and then the demon beasts attacked the venomous Serpent Valley. The remaining elite disciples were almost all dead or injured. As for the Hehuan sect, which had always been lying dormant, this time, for some reason, also mobilized their entire sect's strength to join this war, and their outcome was also completely annihilated in front of the endless demon beasts. Right now, the heavily injured Ghost King sect was in a state of panic, but no matter what, their current situation was still far better than Wandu clan and Hehuan sect. Most of Ghost King sect's elite disciples were left in majestic Fox Mountain, so the core strength was actually not damaged, and for Wandu clan and Hehuan sect, after this battle, it was unknown if anyone had escaped. This day, after recuperating for many days, in the uneasy conjectures of the disciples, Ghost King once again appeared before the Ghost King sect disciples. Ghost King did not even mention the great defeat he had just experienced, instead directly gave out many orders. Very soon, the entire mountainside of majestic Fox Mountain started to stir. Everyone started to pack up their things, prepare dry rations and water, because the last order in Ghost King's order clearly stated one thing: because the Central Plains demon beasts were wreaking havoc and the Holy Sect was greatly weakened. For the future of the Holy Sect, he had already decided the entire Ghost King sect would head towards the northwest together into that 10,000 miles of wildlands, to that legendary birthplace of the Holy Sect, Wildlands Holy Temple. In the bustling scene, Ghost King expressionlessly clasped his hand behind his back, walked towards the icy cold stone chamber deep inside the mountain. It was a journey of 10,000 miles, and the wilderness was hot and desolate. With Bai Yao's current condition, it was not suitable for her to travel such a long distance to the wilderness. Initially, Ghost King wanted to ask Xiao Bai to take care of Bai Yao, with the nine-tailed celestial fox's 1,000 years of cultivation, plus majestic Fox Mountain's many traps. Naturally, it would be foolproof, but now things had changed. Ever since he came back, for some reason, Xiao Bai had disappeared from here. He had asked a few people, but no one knew where she was. Thinking of this, Ghost King frowned slightly. Unknowingly, he had already arrived outside his daughter's icy cold stone chamber. He sighed, opened the door, and walked in. Ghostly was standing there, quietly accompanying Bai Yao. He heard movements behind him, but he did not even move his head. Ghost King slowly strolled, walked to Ghostly, looked from his side at his daughter, who was quietly lying on the cold stone platform. That pale and beautiful face was as elegant as before, as if she also knew the two men who cared about her the most in this world were also the two men who were most important to her, were by her side. Her expression was very quiet, very calm, very at ease. Ghost King looked at Bai Yao for a long time. A faint glint flashed past his eyes with a rare kindness. After a long time, he heaved a long sigh, faintly said, "Why don't you go tidy up your things?" Ghostly did not raise his head and did not answer him directly. Instead, he asked Ghost King, "I heard that within the radius of Wildlands, it is either a desolate gobi or an endless desert, and it is unusually hot throughout the year, isn't it?" Ghost King nodded, said, "That's right. Back then I once went to Wildland's Holy Temple. The weather there was indeed like that." Ghostly frowned and said, "Then how can Bai Yao go with her current state? How can she endure this hardship?" Ghost King glanced at Ghostly, said, "I originally did not intend to bring Bai Yao to Wildlands." Ghostly's expression changed, looked at Ghost King. Ghost King said, "Wildlands is desolate and hot. It is indeed not suitable for Bai Yao. My original intention was to let her stay in majestic Fox Mountain. After we leave, activate the mountain's prohibition, close the entrance, then it will be very safe. But just in case, it is still necessary to have someone come in at least once a month to check, to prevent any accidents." Ghostly stood up, said, "Leaving someone behind. Who is it?" Ghost King faintly said, "My original intention was to entrust her Xiao Bai. Her skills are high, and she is very willing to rest in this mountain for a few years, but for some reason, these days I can't find her." Ghostly's countenance changed slightly. Ghost King saw it. His heart moved, said, "Why, you know where she went?" Ghostly slowly shook his head, was silent for a moment, said, "Let me stay here to take care of Bai Yao." Ghost King stared at him, said, Of course I am at ease with you taking care of Bai Yao. I also trust you, but now that the holy sect has suffered a heavy blow, I intend to restore her prestige. First, we have to stabilize the sect, unify the holy sect. I really need a talent like you by my side. Ghost Li's gaze for the first time left Bai Yao, slowly shifted to Ghost King, suddenly said, "This time in the great battle with the demon beasts, those disciples who followed you out are all dead?" Ghost King's countenance changed, his eyes glinted. This was the first time someone dared to mention this in front of him, but he did not get angry. Only looked deeply at Ghost Li, and then slowly said, "All dead." Ghost Li looked away, again looked at Bai Yao. After a long while, said, "After this great battle, although the evil sect is greatly weakened, but Wan Du clan and Hehuan sect are completely annihilated. To our Ghost King sect, which still has strength, it must be said it is a great opportunity to unify the evil sect. With the current situation as such, even without me, there are no other powers in the sect that can compete with you." He quietly said, "But Bai Yao here still needs someone to take care of her. Just let me stay and take care of her." Ghost King looked at him for a while, nodded and said, "Since you say so, I will not force you. I will entrust Bai Yao to you for the time being. I also believe you can take good care of her, but you must remember, the demon beasts are terrifying and their senses are sharp. Just in case, it is best to seal the mountain gates, and then you can come in and check once every 1 or 2 months. Then there won't be anything wrong." Ghost Li slowly nodded, considered to have agreed. Ghost King looked at his daughter again. After a moment, he sighed, turned, and walked out. Just when he was about to reach the door, suddenly Ghost Li's voice was heard from behind him. "Sect head." Ghost King was surprised. It was somewhat unexpected. Ghost Li rarely took the initiative to greet him. This time he suddenly spoke. He did not know what was the matter. Immediately said, "What?" Ghost Li was silent for a moment, suddenly said, "Do you hate me in your heart?" Ghost King's back was facing him, motionless, did not speak, and his expression could not be seen. Ghost Li slowly said, "Bai Yao became like this because of me. In your heart, do you hate me very much?" His face was indifferent, as if he was talking about a topic that had nothing to do with him, but Ghost King did not speak all along. In the stone chamber, the two men stood back to back. The atmosphere seemed to stiffen. The light smoke gently floated up from the cold stone platform below Bai Yao, drifted in the air. Not knowing how long later, the sound of the stone door being pulled open was heard. Ghost King did not say anything, quietly walked out. Rumble. A deep sound, the stone door once again closed, leaving only Ghost Li beside Bai Yao in the cold stone chamber. His face was wooden, staring blankly at the girl in front of him. In the ancient and dense primeval forest, waves of terrible and burnt smell came with the wind, like ugly scars. The originally green forest was filled with traces of the demon beast's ravages, huge trees lying in disorder on the ground. Countless of animal corpses were strewn everywhere. The entire forest's peaceful atmosphere was nowhere to be seen. The second day after finding that evil sect disciple who had already gone mad, Xiao Yikai, Fa Xiong, and the rest of the 7 good faction disciples, following the increasingly obvious traces of the demon beasts, gradually approached that valley hidden deep in the mountains. Along the way, the forest they passed through was filled with the scene they had just seen. Although they didn't see any human corpses, the scene was still very moving. In many of their hearts, they even thought at the same time, could it be that these demon beasts were really born to kill and come to this world? This day at noon, the group of them appeared on that broken ancient path outside the venomous Serpent Valley. The traces of destruction by the demon beasts were so obvious that without much effort, that ancient path had widened by several times after being trampled by the demon beasts. Everywhere were huge footprints and sharp claw marks left by the demon beasts. The air was still filled with a stench. Other than that, there seemed to be a thinner, but even more unbearable stench, but no one could tell what it was. Chapter 293. Looking at the valley entrance ahead, inside was the same mess as outside. The land and forest ravaged by that terrible torrent were clearly visible, the ancient path winding. Who knew what else was in that valley? For some reason, everyone looked a little nervous and fell into an awkward silence. Finally, it was Xiao Yikai who coughed, but after that he quietly discovered that his throat was dry and painful. He composed himself, said, "Everyone, Seems like that evil sect disciple did not lie. It should be here. The demon beasts and evil sect had a great battle. He looked around, hesitated for a moment, and then asked, "Let's go in and take a look?" No one spoke. Right now, even Li Sun's expression was not looking good. After a moment, Fa Xiang, who was standing beside Xiao Yikai, quietly chanted a Buddhist name, said, "Since we are already here, there is no need for us to give up. Let's go in." Actually, everyone here understood this logic, just that for some reason, there seemed to be something strange in that valley, quietly affecting everyone's emotions, making them fearful. Fashion, who had been following Fa Xiang, with a low, muffled voice acknowledged, walked to his senior brother. "Let's go." The one who spoke was not Xiao Yikai, but Lin Jingyu. His hand holding the dragon slayer sword tightened, and then, with a solemn expression, led the way into the valley. Following behind him was Lu Sueki. Li Sun also followed. Xiao Yikai and Fa Xiang looked at each other, saw the worry in each other's eyes, but after a moment, everyone still walked in. The huge valley, the endless forest, everyone walked in the venomous serpent valley, but there was only dead silence. Not to mention seeing animals, even the usual chirping of birds couldn't be heard. The surroundings of this valley seemed to have turned into a lifeless ghost town. The stench of the demonic beasts in the air was as thick, but as they ventured deeper, each of their brows frowned tighter and tighter. At this moment, along with the wind in the valley, another stench, a terrible smell that almost made them want to vomit, also became thicker and thicker. The mountain path was winding. Everyone was fully focused on the surroundings, slowly moving forward. There was a corner in front of them, and it was a kernel. The stench in the air was so disgusting that it was unbearable. Suddenly, Yan Hong, who was walking in the middle, rushed to the roadside. The others were shocked. Li Sun exclaimed, "Junior sister, what happened to you?" Halfway through, he stopped because he and the rest saw Yan Hong standing in the weeds by the roadside, vomiting violently. No one laughed, because no one knew how much longer they could hold on. Although the valley had yet to reveal its true face, it seemed to be more terrifying than most places in this world. Yan Hong gasped for breath and stopped. Her face was pale. She walked back to the crowd and said in a low voice, "Sorry, I really." Fa Xiang forced a smile, saying, "Junior apprentice sister Yin, it's all right." Xiao Yikai also said, "That's right. No one can stand the smell. You don't have to worry about it. If you can't stand it, why don't you wait for us outside the valley?" Yan Hong hesitated for a moment, shook her head and said, "Let's go." Li Sun walked over, nodded to Yan Hong. A comforting look in his eyes, quietly said, "Be careful yourself, don't force yourself." Yan Hong nodded in agreement. Xiao Yikai turned and said, "All right, let's continue. Not sure what kind of monsters and dangers lie ahead. Everyone must be careful." Everyone nodded and once again walked forward. Lin Jingyu was still walking at the front. Nearing the corner of the call, his hand, which was holding the dragon slayer sword, started to overflow with cold sweat. Right now the air was so disgusting that it was hard to breathe. Lin Jingyu's face turned slightly pale, clenched his teeth, with a stride, went past the corner of the call and saw the scene in the valley. His entire body instantly stiffened. The crowd behind him immediately noticed Lin Jingyu's unusual state, couldn't help but became nervous. Xiao Yikai quietly called out to Lin Jingyu twice, but he did not respond at all. His pair of eyes only stared straight ahead. Lu Sueki was the second to walk up, then Li Sun, Yan Hong, Xiao Yikai, Fa Xiang, and Fashion, one by one walked past the corner of the call and saw the scene in the venomous serpent valley. Then, everyone was stunned. That must be the legendary tragic Azura Hell. Such a horrifying scene impressively appeared under the clear blue sky of the day. Innumerable bones fell inside and outside that house in the venomous serpent valley. Humans, also various kinds of demon beasts and monsters. Some were complete, but most were broken limbs, dismembered to the point that it was unrecognizable, densely packed all over the ground. Almost not a single gap could be seen. After forcing themselves to calm down, Xiao Yikai and the rest continued to walk with their pale faces. Tragic scenes were everywhere, and the deeper they went, the more tragic it was. The battle here was extremely tragic. Countless of human corpses and demon beast corpses were entangled together. The ground beneath their feet had completely turned dark. That was the color of blood. Walking into the house, inside and outside every room, and at the entrance of the important passageways, one could see the remnants of a fierce battle. In some places, there were even piles of corpses. Clearly, for the sake of this small entrance, both sides had fought with their lives on the line, stepping on the corpses of their comrades as they fought to the death. In the courtyard, everyone began to see the corpses of several gigantic demonic beasts. Some of them were even taller than the entire palace. However, at this moment, these insufferably ferocious demonic beasts were just quietly lying in this hellish place, waiting to rot. The stench of corpses in the air had already reached a horrifying degree. But the good faction disciples instead felt better than before, because the miserable scene in front of them made them more indifferent to the stench. But no one's expression was good. No matter who looked, these people's faces seemed to be no different than a dead person. They continued to walk deeper into the house. More corpses appeared in front of them. Now no one knew how many evil faction disciples and demon beasts had died in this valley. They almost subconsciously walked. Every single one of them had a blank expression on their faces. Every single one of them tightly gripped their magic treasures, unwilling to relax in the slightest. After crossing countless corpses and seas of blood, they arrived in front of a mourning hall. The reason why they could tell it was a mourning hall was because they saw a coffin in this room, and the inside and outside of this room seemed to be the place where the battle was the most intense. Saying that the corpses were piled up like a mountain was not an exaggeration. And it was also here they found many familiar evil faction corpses. Baiduzi, Vampire Demon, Elder Duanmu. These once all-powerful evil faction ferocious people, right now all died with grievances hiding in this place. Many of their faces were still filled with fear. Everyone could imagine it, but no one was willing to imagine what it was like before they died. As they probed deeper, Xiao Yikai and the rest, who were slightly older, successively discovered more famous evil faction figures, including the god of poison's 3 great disciples, many important figures in Hehuan's sect. On the other hand, over at Ghost King's sect, although the number of dead disciples wearing Ghost King's sect uniform was extremely high, the corpses of famous figures were rarely discovered. The crowd slowly gathered in front of the mourning hall. Looking at the ugly expressions on the surrounding people, Xiao Yikai said bitterly, "Many died here. The important figures of the evil faction are all here. Wandu clan seems to be all dead." Yanhong's face was frighteningly pale, quietly said, "It is the same over there. Many from Hehuan's sect also died. Even Samyao Madam is also there." Lu Sueki's face was pale, her teeth tightly biting her lower lip. The expression on her face was complicated. She looked unbearable, disgusted, and for some reason, she seemed to be afraid. After being the last to return to the crowd, she suddenly said, "Did anyone see Ghost King sect people?" The crowd shook their heads together and then were stunned. Li Sun, who was standing beside, suddenly looked even uglier. Xiao Yikai glanced at him, spoke to Lu Sueki. Many of Ghost King's sect's ordinary disciples died, but did not seem to see famous figures' corpses. Lu Sueki's expression softened, but Li Sun's eyes suddenly glinted, coldly said, "Xiao Senior Brother, don't tell me you have forgotten that these demon beasts all eat humans. Along the way we came in, we saw many white bones. Who knows if those Ghost King sect evildoers have already wah." A shout interrupted Li Sun's words. It was Yanhong who suddenly could not bear it, ran to the corner and vomited. Li Sun was stunned for a moment, suddenly sighed, and stopped talking. Fa Xiang looked unbearable. Together with fashion both quietly chanted, "Everyone knew." Although Li Sun's words were unpleasant to hear, but the possibility was really high. Xiao Yikai, Lin Jingyu, and the rest had complicated expressions, slowly lowered their heads. Only Ainan's face was pale, without a trace of blood. Even her body involuntarily swayed a few times. Just that this cold girl did not lower her head. She slowly looked up at the sky, that stretch of boundless blue sky. Even the clouds above the valley looked blood-red. Lu Sueki's lips moved, as if she wanted to shout something, but in the end, no sound came out. Chapter 294. Qing Yinhil Tong Tian Peak, Crystal Hall. What? With disbelief and shock, Reverend Dao Xian blurted out, The evil sect's three main branches were completely annihilated after the decisive battle with the demon beasts. Standing below the three current good faction leaders, and the many seniors sitting or standing beside, Xiao Yikai, Fa Xiang, Lu Sueki, and the rest of the good faction disciples who had returned to Qin Yun Hill, did not speak. Only the leader Xiao Yikai nodded his head affirmatively, said, "Yes, teacher, the seven of us saw it with our own eyes. The southwest Venomous Serpent Valley was littered with corpses. Too horrible to look at. The evil sect indeed suffered heavy losses, including Samyao Madam and many of the evil sect Yihuan's sect. Wandu clan figures, we have already found their corpses. Only the Ghost King sect figures are not found, but maybe because the demon beast devoured people, so." Lu Sueki, who was standing behind, turned pale again, as if this matter and the tragic scene at that time was always engraved in her heart, making her unable to get rid of it. But no matter what, right now she was already able to control her emotions. On the surface, she did not reveal anything. The others also did not notice anything. Only Small Bamboo Valley leader Shuewa Master, the person who had raised Lu Sueki, noticed Lu Sueki's frosty, cold, and elegant face seemed to have an unusual anguish. Shuewa Master frowned slightly, gently sighed, and did not speak. Right now, the crowd in the Crystal Hall was in an uproar, the voices of discussion getting louder and louder. Looking at these good faction elites' expressions, some were surprised, some were fearful, but even more were complicated, pleasantly surprised. Come to think of it, the evil sect and Central Plains good faction have been fighting for many years. The good faction's several encirclement and annihilation did not have much effect. This time they were annihilated by the demon beasts. It was really a pleasant surprise. Just that since the evil sect was able to contend with the good faction, their strength naturally could not be underestimated, but facing the attack of the demon beasts, they were not fools. Everyone could guess. The next target of the demon beasts would definitely be Qin Yun Hill, where the world's good faction gathered. And now, the good faction, which was already the world's last hope, would they be able to withstand this unprecedented catastrophe? No one was confident. The three great good faction giants sitting at the front, Reverend Daoxian, Puhong Master, and Yun Elon, after quietly discussing for a while, all frowned. At this time, Reverend Daoxian said a few words. Puhong Master and Yun Elon both nodded, indicating their agreement. Then Reverend Daoxian stood up and coughed. The whispers in the Crystal Hall immediately quietened down. Everyone's eyes looked towards Reverend Daoxian. Reverend Daoxian's face was solemn. After the crowd had completely quietened down, in a deep voice said, "Fellow friends, what happened just now, everyone has heard clearly. The accidental destruction of the evil sect was completely out of our expectations. But as for the details of the situation, whether there were any survivors of the evil sect who escaped from that great battle, we still need to investigate clearly. But this matter is not important now." His face was grim, his eyes glinting, not angry, but imposing, solemnly said, "Fellow friends, now that the catastrophe is before us, the people of the world are in misery and suffering. The demon beast's evildoer's strength is really surprising. But since we are good faction people, there is no reason for us to shrink back at the last minute. This matter is complicated. I, Puhong Master, and Yun Valley Master will have to discuss it and then make a decision. Everyone please return first. Recuperate well. The date of the great battle most likely is not far. At that time, for the common people, hope that everyone will put in more effort." Everyone nodded their heads in agreement. Reverend Daoxian revealed a smile. Puhong Master and Yun Elon also stood up, walked towards the rear hall. Reverend Daoxian was about to follow when he suddenly thought of something, said to Xiao Yikai, "Yikai, you come too. Tell us the details of the situation again." Xiao Yikai acknowledged, strode up, followed behind Reverend Daoxian into the rear hall. The great hall, after the three highly respected seniors left, immediately became lively. The crowd gathered in groups of 3 to 5, discussing spiritedly. Other than Xiao Yikai, who followed Reverend Daoxian to the rear hall, the other 6 good faction disciples who had gone to the southwest to gather information were surrounded by many people. Everyone talking at once about the situation, from time to time exclaimed, shook their heads, sighed, etc., all kinds of expressions and voices. And in the crowd, Lu Sweki maintained her silence, her eyes indifferent, as if she could not see the faces of the people in front of her, instead staring an unknown place far away. Suddenly there was a low commotion in the crowd, and then a path was made. Qingyun's sect small bamboo valley head Shuiwen master walked in, behind her followed by Wen Min and a few other small bamboo valley beautiful female disciples. Lu Sweki recovered her senses, saw her teacher walking in front of her and looking at her. Her lips moved, quietly called out, "Teacher." Then, lowered her head. Shuiwen master expressionlessly said, "Sect head reverend wants to discuss the matter with the other seniors. There will not be anything else here for the time being. Follow me back to small bamboo valley first." Lu Sweki nodded, quietly said, "Yes." Shuiwen master did not care about the others. Led the way out of Crystal Hall. Lu Sweki followed. Qingyun's sect head's reputation was not to be underestimated. Most of the other good faction people were very respectful to her. One by one made way for her. Seeing that Lu Sweki was about to follow Shuiwen master out of Crystal Hall, Li Sun, who was standing beside, a trace of anxiety flashed past his face, stepped forward, was about to say something. Suddenly a figure blocked in front of him. Li Sun was shocked, looked carefully. It was Shuiwen master's eldest disciple, Wen Min. Wen Min smiled at Li Sun, said, "Li Senior brother, Sweki Junior sister is very tired from the journey. Better let her have a good rest. And this time she has been out for quite some time. My teacher also has a lot to say to her." Li Sun glanced at Wen Min a few times. Disappointment appeared on his face, but in the end he still stopped his steps, said, "All right, but will Senior sister please take good care of..." Not waiting for Li Sun to finish, Wen Min had already smiled and said, "Li Senior brother, don't worry. Sweki Junior sister and I are sisters of the same sect. Our relationship is even better than real sisters. What should be done, what should be said, I will naturally do it." Li Sun's face turned red, nodded and did not speak anymore, retreated to the side. Wen Min with the other small bamboo valley female disciples also walked out of Crystal Hall. Very soon, Qingyun Hill small bamboo valley people had already disappeared from everyone's sight. Riding on the clouds along the way, from Tongtian Peak back to small bamboo valley. After Shuiwen master landed, her face cold, did not speak to anyone, directly walked into the small bamboo valley hall. Everyone respectfully stood where they were, watching Shuiwen master. After Shuiwen master's figure disappeared in that building, Lu Sweki's eyes seemed to be in a daze, stood motionless, until Wen Min patted her shoulder. Then she was startled. Wen Min's eyes had a trace of worry, quietly said, "Junior sister, what's wrong with you? Look at your dazed look, calling you a few times, and there's no response." Lu Sweki was stunned for a moment, forced a smile on her face, said, "Sorry, senior sister." Wen Min shook her head, said, "Why are you saying sorry to me? We are all sisters. Don't be so distant." "Oh, right. I saw something wrong with teacher's expression. I will go in to see her now. You must have had a tough journey. Go back and have a good rest." Lu Sweki was silent for a moment, quietly said, "I'm afraid teacher is still angry with me." Wen Min looked at this most beautiful and outstanding junior sister in the same sect, suddenly felt that on her pale face, although still beautiful, but compared to the past, looked more haggard. Wen Min sighed in her heart, hugged Lu Sweki's shoulder, softly said, "Silly girl, don't let your imagination run wild. How teacher has always treated you. All of us and you yourself know it. It's all right. I will go take a look now." Lu Sweki silently nodded. Wen Min smiled, instructed the other junior sisters, was about to leave when suddenly a young girl walked out from the door ahead. It was that young girl Xiaoshi who sneaked up to Small Bamboo Valley that day. Because she was young and not skilled enough, she had been staying at Small Bamboo Valley. Shuiwen master liked her intelligence and cuteness, and so kept her by her side. Xiaoshi looked over and quickly walked over to Wen Min and Lu Sweki. Wen Min made a sound, waited until Xiaoshi was before her, said, "Xiaoshi, why did you come out? Didn't teacher just return? You should be attending to her." Xiaoshi nodded, glanced at Lu Sweki, said, "Big senior sister, various senior sisters. Teacher asked me to call Xiaoqi's senior sister over to Quiet Bamboo Pavilion to see her." Wen Min was surprised, turned and glanced at Lu Sweki, Lu Sweki's lips moved, a complicated expression flashed past her eyes, and then said, "All right, I will go now." After speaking, she walked straight ahead and soon disappeared from the small bamboo valley buildings. When Min watched Lu Sweki walking further away, frowned, spoke to Xiaoshi. "Xiaoshi, did teacher say anything else? Why did she call Xiaoqi over?" Xiaoshi shook her head and said, "No." After teacher returned, she kept silent. After a while she asked me to call Xiaoqi's senior sister to see her. When Min, oh, for a moment she could not understand, shook her head and spoke to the other small bamboo valley female disciples. "All right, now it seems like there is nothing else. All of you can go back and rest first." The girls acknowledged and walked away. When Min finally glanced at the direction where Lu Sweki had left, her heart felt heavy. For a moment she was overwhelmed with mixed feelings. Chapter 295. Quiet Bamboo Pavilion was a secluded place among the halls and buildings of small bamboo valley, near the back of the mountain, surrounded by verdant tears bamboo. From time to time the mountain breeze blew past, the bamboo leaves gently swayed, giving one a feeling of tranquility. Shuewa Master had always liked to come here, to be alone, so the other small bamboo valley disciples were also very familiar with this place. Lu Sweki walked through the cloister and stepped onto the small path in the bamboo forest that was paved with smooth pebbles. The path was winding and deep into the bamboo forest. Very soon, she came to the house that was built with bamboo. From the outside, it looked simple and unadorned. The walls were made of beads, but who knew how much wind and rain had passed through? At this moment, there were faint marks on them. On both sides of the house, there was a small window. Indistinctly saw Shuewa Master sitting quietly inside. Lu Sweki walked to the door. The same bamboo door was left ajar. For some reason, she felt nervous, took a deep breath, said, "Teacher, I am Sweki. Did you call me?" Shuewa Master's voice was heard from the house, flat and emotionless, said, "Yes, come in." Lu Sweki pulled herself together, pushed the door open, and walked in. The furnishings in the house were very simple. Tables and chairs, tea set, another desk by the window. On it there was paper, inkstone, brush, and ink. Shuewa Master was not a person who liked luxury. Right now she was sitting at the desk by the window, quietly watching the bamboo forest outside. Lu Sweki walked behind her, looked at Shuewa Master's back, quietly said, "Teacher." Shuewa Master slowly turned around, looked at Lu Sweki. Lu Sweki seemed unwilling to look at her teacher, lowered her head. Both teacher and disciple, neither spoke. The atmosphere in the room for a moment became awkward. Actually, speaking of which, both Shuewa Master and Lu Sweki were not talkative people. This kind of scene had indeed happened before when they were alone, but for some reason, today at this time, there seemed to be a strange feeling between teacher and disciple, making them much further apart than before. After a while, Shuewa Master broke the silence, calmly asked, "This time you went to the southwest? Was it smooth?" Lu Sweki nodded her head, said, "Fortunately, along the way, the demon beasts were rampant, but we tried our best to avoid them, and finally found a crazy evil sect disciple. Then we found the venomous Serpent Valley." So her voice suddenly stopped, and a clear trace of pain flashed across her face. Even her body seemed to tremble slightly. Shuewa Master looked at Lu Sweki. Her eyes glimmered, seemed to be pondering something. After a moment, she looked at Lu Sweki, said, "Have you seen him?" Lu Sweki was surprised, looked at Shuewa Master, although Shuewa Master's eyes were calm, but seemed to see through her heart. Lu Sweki's expression changed, whispered, "Master, what did you say?" Shuewa Master coldly said, "I am talking about Zhang Xiaofan, who is also the current Ghost King sect's ghostly." Shueyu's voice was not loud, but to Lu Sweki, it was like thunder beside her ears. She abruptly raised her head, her face pale, but the bright eyes of Shueyu Master standing in front of her were still staring at her eyes. Lu Sweki's lips slightly opened and closed, tightly pressed together, not saying a word. Silence once again descended. Not knowing how much time had passed, Shueyu Master's face slowly relaxed. Her eyes that looked at Lu Sweki also gradually had a sense of pity and heartache. "Cheer! How long are you going to lie to me?" Shueyu Master looked at Lu Sweki, slowly said. Lu Sweki's hands clenched into fists. The joints on her fair skin turned white because of the force, obviously at this moment. Her heart was also very agitated. She looked at this teacher who had raised her since young. Her eyes gradually became misty, but eventually she held it in, clenched her teeth. She slowly knelt down in front of Shueyu Master. It is disciples' fault, failed to live up to teacher's teachings. Her voice became softer and softer. Her delicate figure also seemed to be gently trembling. Shueyu Master heaved a long sigh, her eyes full of vicissitudes, as if from this disciple. She recalled the past. Even her own expression also had some sadness. She slowly turned around, walked to the window, looked at the verdant bamboos, still swaying with the wind, just that she did not know if the people of that year still remember this place. Get up, Shueyu Master said lightly. There was no movement behind her. Obviously, Lu Sueki was still kneeling on the ground. Shueyu Master did not say much, said, Cheer, you have always been smart. Some things I thought even if I don't say it, you should know. Lu Sueki kneeled behind her, motionless. Shueyu Master continued, the entanglement between you and that Sha Danan. To you, this is an ill-fated relationship. Do you know? Lu Sueki answered quietly. Her voice was almost inaudible, said yes. Shueyu Master slowly said, moreover, Sha Danan has already betrayed the good, devoured blood and turned into devil. What he did for these 10 years, I don't need to tell you more. To tell you the truth, the matter between you and him has already spread all over the city. Even your head master Doyle Sherwa already know about it. But these elders, first because you are young and ignorant, second because they pity your talent and intelligence. Cultivation is not easy, so they give you chances again and again. You better not be stubborn. Towards the end, Shueyu Master's voice gradually turned urgent. Her voice also gradually became stern. Lu Sueki's face became paler, but for some reason, her body calmed down, no longer trembling like before. Shueyu Master's face slowly softened, turned around, helped Lu Sueki up, softly said, Cheer, you are my most beloved disciple. Among the same faction, even among the entire Jadian 7 branches, among the younger generation disciples, your talent and cultivation is also the highest. Your future is really limitless. I have very high expectation of you. Do you know? Lu Sueki quietly said, Yes, Master. Shueyu Master looked at her, said, With your talent, in the future, small bamboo height branch head position will naturally be yours. At that time, you'll be respected by all. Meditate on heaven's way. Like this, isn't it what you've been dreaming of? Lu Sueki was silent, only slightly lowered her head. On her beautiful face, other than her pale face, her bright eyes were slowly changing light. There, the once hazy mist had already disappeared. Shueyu Master sighed, said, You go back and think about it. Lu Sueki stood in front of her. After hearing, she did not immediately turn and leave, but slowly raised her head, looked at this teacher who had raised her up. What is it, Chiu? Shueyu Master asked. Master. Lu Sueki slowly called, said, I have let you down. Shueyu Master shook her head, sighed, said, What silly words are you saying? Lu Sueki's expression seemed a little strange. Her usually cold face showed a rare trace of excitement. Even her breathing slowly quickened. Shueyu Master quickly noticed, frowned and looked at her, said, What is it, Cheer? Lu Sueki's heart seemed to be stirred up, so her face was also changing, but finally, she still slowly faced Shueyu Master, quietly said, Master, you are right. I am really muddle-headed. Between me and Zhang Xiaofan, I also know it is an ill-fated relationship. A trace of regret flashed across Shueyu Master's eyes, softly said, Cheer, repent before it is too late. As long as you cut off your feelings, there is nothing great. At least, there is still Master and small bamboo height, and Jadian can accommodate you. Lu Sueki suddenly raised her head. The speed and strength surprised everyone. On her beautiful face, right now, was filled with pain. Even her voice seemed to be trembling. Master, but I cannot. Shueyu Master's face changed greatly, stared deeply at Lu Sueki. Suddenly her hand rose and fell. Pa heavily slapped Lu Sueki's face. Lu Sueki did not dodge, did not step back, stood there motionless, only bit her lips. Her body slowly trembled. What did you say? Shuei Master's voice also seemed to be trembling, but her words were filled with anger. You this traitorous disciple, do you know what you're saying? Lu Sueki's face was already pale without a trace of blood, but she met Shui Master's gaze, as if she had already made up her mind, resolutely said, Teacher, you adopted me when I was young, raised me up, taught me, and brought me up. There is no greater kindness than this. Sueki is unfilial, made teacher angry and sad, deserved 10,000 deaths. Her white dress fluttered, once again kneeled in front of Shuei Master, said, Sueki would rather die than dare to betray teacher's good. In the future, if I meet that Zhang Xiaofan, disciple will try my best, use Aeolian Firmus to take his life. If not, then I will die in his hands. Shuei Master's face was filled with anger. After hearing Lu Sueki said, she dare not betray good, and will fight with Zhang Xiaofan. Then her face softened a little, but what Lu Sueki said next made her face changed greatly again. Lu Sueki kneeled in front of her, took a deep breath, her eyes turned back, looked at the ground in front of her, seemed to be looking at her own heart, slowly said, But this strand of sinful emotion, disciple, cannot cut it, cannot cut it. The room instantly fell into a dead silence, as if even the sound of breathing had stopped. After a moment, Shuei Master's sharp and stern voice scolded, was heard, reverberated in this abode. You traitorous disciple, get out, get out. I don't want to see you anymore. Chapter 296. Majestic Fox Mountain, Cold Stone Chamber. Ghostly silently looked at Bai Yao, who was peacefully lying on the cold stone platform. The girl sleeping in the white light smoke. Her lips seemed to always carry that trace of smile. Did she still feel it? Still know that there was someone beside her protecting her? Or could it be, in her heart, she had never regretted before, therefore she could sleep so peacefully? To these, Ghostly had asked himself numerous times. The answer he never knew, also did not dare to think, just that each time he thought, he seemed to suffer more torment. But his own body was getting worse, although because he had practiced the 3 volumes of Tian Shu True Ways, these days he had gradually understood Buddhist, Taoist, evil 3 families' true ways. Among them there seemed to be a place where they merged into one. His skills improved by the day, but the sinister orb evil power seemed to be roaming around his body every day, like a lingering spirit, waiting for the last chance to perish together with him. That ice-cold feeling, Ghostly could not be more familiar with it. Ever since he was young, it had always been with him, this feeling, even if he died, because he would also die feeling cold like this. He laughed bitterly in his heart, glanced at Bai Yao for the last time. This was the 3rd day he had been guarding Bai Yao alone. Have a good rest. I will come back to see you soon. Ghostly softly said, Don't be afraid. Your father and I are only leaving temporarily. Even if I die, I will come back to see you again before I die. He looked at Bai Yao, gently smiled, and then turned and walked out of this cold stone chamber. The light smoke drifted like a veil behind him. Rumble. The heavy stone door slowly closed behind him. Xiao Hui, who had been waiting beside, with a sound leapt onto his shoulder. Ghostly stretched out his hand and gently stroked Xiao Hui's head, nodded and walked out. Along the way, he either stretched his hand to the walls or made many detours to fiddle with the mechanisms. Along the way, layers of mechanisms in Majestic Fox Mountain Ghost King Sec headquarters were all activated. Just the heavy stone doors alone were more than 10. In the belly of Majestic Fox Mountain, right now, there were sounds of mechanisms, but only Ghostly was there. The others had already followed Ghost King to Savage Temple 3 days ago. Right now, Majestic Fox Mountain, desolate and desolate. Ghostly walked out of the mountain. When the sunlight shone on his body, bringing traces of warmth, he couldn't help but shiver. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The last stone door slowly closed, covering this huge mountainside. An indistinct pada sound was heard. Ghostly knew that was the sound of the mechanism being reversed. In the future, if someone did not know how to activate the mechanism and wanted to force their way in from the outside, facing this 10,000 caddies huge rock, they would need to be like a celestial being. The warm sunlight shone on their bodies. Xiao Hui, who was lying on Ghostly's shoulder, stretched out its arms, stretched its back, and even yawned. Ghostly turned his head to look at it, smiled, and said, What's wrong? Why do you look so bored and sleepy? Xiao Hui called out twice, the whites of its eyes on its monkey face, and then its limbs danced, pointing towards the outside of the mountain. Ghostly smiled and said, "You are bored? Oh, speaking of which, this place is desolate. There are not even a few trees. No wonder you feel uncomfortable." Xiao Hui immediately nodded with all its might, jumped down from Ghostly's shoulder, called out, and danced with joy. Ghostly breathed deeply, turned back to look at the entrance of the cave, which had already merged with the mountain. No traces could be seen at all, nodded and said, "All right, anyway, we have to wait for a month before going in to visit Bai Yao. Using this period of time, we will take a stroll around and relax." Xiao Hui was overjoyed, bounced up and down on the ground, grinned and laughed. Ghostly was influenced by it. His mood improved a lot, scolded laughingly. "All right, still not coming up. If not, you can just stay here by yourself." Xiao Hui shrunk its head. With a sound, scurried back, climbed up Ghostly's shoulder in a few moves, laughed. Ghostly shook his head, a slight smile on his lips, his hands moved, the familiar cold feeling again surfaced. Ghostly seemed to have thought of something, hesitated for a moment. Xiao Hui was puzzled why Ghostly did not fly away, called out twice. Ghostly turned back and glanced at it, and then smiled faintly, softly said, "Life is lonely. Why bother to think so much?" Xiao Hui blinked twice, clearly did not understand Ghostly's sudden words. Ghostly did not say anything more. With a flip of his hand, green light floated. The soul-absorbing stick was released, carrying one man and one monkey, straight up to the sky, leaving majestic Fox Mountain. The nearest inhabited place to majestic Fox Mountain was a small town 200 miles to the northeast, called Sanfu Town. Sanfu Town did not have a lot of population, but there were a few villages around. It could be considered as bustling. In the past, in order to keep it a secret, when Ghost King's sect purchased daily necessities, they did not go to Sanfu Town, but went to further cities to purchase, to prevent good faction or evil sect other sects from discovering the location of their headquarters. But before the Ghost King's sect disciples returned, many of them would go to Sanfu Town to rest. In the past, Ghostly would bring Xiao Hui and pass by Sanfu Town, although it was not many times, but Xiao Hui was extremely intelligent and actually remembered it well. Right now, they had just left majestic Fox Mountain. Xiao Hui on Ghostly's shoulder waved its arms with all its might, kept pointing to Sanfu Town. Evidently, it wanted to go there to drink and eat. Ghostly shook his head, but did not say anything, changed direction, and flew towards Sanfu Town. 200 miles distance, to cultivators flying in the air, was not too far. Between the white clouds and the blue sky, a faint green light with some black energy flashed and flew, streaking across the sky. Xiao Hui perched on his shoulder restlessly. At times it would tilt its head. Its long monkey tail also swayed here and there, not knowing if it was thinking about the delicious food it was going to enjoy later. Ghostly, while controlling the soul-absorbing stick, looked down below. Needless to say, the area around majestic Fox Mountain was a stretch of desolate barren hills. After leaving the mountains, the terrain was rather flat, but the wilderness was quiet. Similarly, there was no sign of human habitation. Looking down from above, there was only a desolate ancient path extending alone in the wilderness. Not knowing where it led to, Ghostly suddenly sighed, but did not say anything, just that Xiao Hui felt puzzled and glanced at its master a few more times. Heading towards the northeast direction for less than an hour, they had already flown to the top of Three Blessings Town. From afar, they could see a continuous stretch of houses below, one after another. Xiao Hui was already excited. It called out and pointed downwards. Ghostly smiled and said, "All right, let's go down now." Green light flashed, making sharp sounds in the air, descended from the sky and landed on the streets of Sanfu Town. But once they landed, Ghostly's brows were already frowning. Xiao Hui jumped down from his shoulder, scratched its head, and looked around, clearly also puzzled. The next moment, it seemed to have sensed something. Its three eyes lit up at the same time. It called out. Its face looked nervous. The Three Blessings Town in front of him seemed to have become an empty town. Most of the houses in the surroundings were still intact, and only a few places that were damaged could be seen. However, the people in the town had completely disappeared. A deathly silence shrouded over this small town. Ghostly snorted, more or less understood. Needless to say, this place had become like this, Most likely it was because of the demon beast catastrophe. The people in the town had either escaped to the north a step earlier. If they were slower, most likely they too would not be able to avoid the fate of becoming the demon beast's food. A perfectly good small town turned into such a state. And thinking about the past in the vast divine land, how many other towns were like this? A wind blew over from afar, blowing up some sand on the streets. In such a warm day, the wind blowing on this small town seemed to be cold. Xiao Hui still seemed a little uneasy, moved closer to Ghostly, and at the same time looked around. Ghostly bent down, carried Xiao Hui up, quietly said, "It's all right." Xiao Hui's eyes blinked, seemed to be with Ghostly, and also quietened down. Ghostly breathed deeply, lifted his feet, and unhurriedly walked forward. Xiao Hui climbed onto his shoulder, no longer making any noise, quietly looked around. Other than the sound of the wind, there was no sound at all. Ghostly strolled along. Halfway through the streets, the houses all had their doors and windows tightly shut. Some had their doors wide open, not knowing if the demon beasts had barged in. Just that along the way, he did not see any human corpses. Seemed like the commoners had received the news beforehand, and most of them had escaped to the north. Chapter 297. And at this moment, suddenly a gust of cold wind blew past. A tottering door on the left side of the street fell with a sound, smashed onto the ground, making a loud sound, reverberating in the empty street. Ghostly and Xiao Hui both turned to look at the same time. Behind the door, an arm fell powerlessly on the wooden board, motionless. At the same time, there was a faint smell of blood in the air. Ghostly looked at that direction for a while, and then turned and continued to walk. Xiao Hui crouched on Ghostly's shoulder, but occasionally turned back to look at that arm. Ghostly had been to Sanfu Town a few times before, so he knew a thing or two about the situation here. He walked slowly, was silent for a long time, and then said, "I remember there is a tavern ahead. Let's go there. Maybe we can find something for you to eat." Xiao Hui called out twice. The sound of footsteps on the street right now sounded especially loud. The cold wind blew wave after wave from their backs. Very soon, following the street, they came to that tavern. The tavern signboard had already fallen from the door, flipped over at the entrance, covered with a layer of dust. Ghostly glanced at the nameless wooden signboard, stepped on it, leaving a footprint on it. Suddenly, Xiao Hui made a low cry. Staring into the tavern, Ghostly's body also suddenly stopped. After a moment, a deep roar was heard from the tavern. Was it the demon beast? This was Ghostly's first reaction, just that the roar sounded somewhat familiar. Roar! Xiao Hui suddenly screamed, scuttled into the tavern. Ghostly was shocked, did not know why Xiao Hui suddenly became agitated, but Xiao Hui had always been extremely close to him. Could be said to be his only companion. No matter what, he could not let Xiao Hui face the mysterious thing in the tavern alone. Seeing that Xiao Hui was about to enter the tavern, Ghostly's countenance changed, his figure swayed, and had already chased in. The next moment, he appeared in the tavern. When he saw clearly the things in the tavern, he could not help but was stunned. The tavern was in a mess. Pots, bowls, ladles, and bowls were thrown everywhere. Broken pieces were piled up. The tables and chairs that were originally there were also messy. The few that were still intact had a thick layer of dust on them. But in such a dilapidated tavern, in the middle of the tavern, on a table that was still in good condition, there was a pot of wine and a few wine cups. Sitting beside it was a young man dressed in bright silk clothes. And in the empty space between him and Ghostly, a strange beast was confronting Xiao Hui, its appearance ferocious and terrifying. Its deep roar carried a trace of shock. It was the evil beast Tao Tai. It was a mysterious young man who met Ghostly in the deep forest of the desolate mountains. The Tao Tai stretched out its long neck, stared at Xiao Hui with its 4 bell-sized huge eyes, but Xiao Hui's expression was not as nervous as it was at the beginning. Instead, it looked happy. It called out twice, grinned, and slowly walked forward. It wanted to use its hand to touch the Tao Tai's head. The Tao Tai growled. Obviously, it was not used to Xiao Hui's action. Xiao Hui paused for a moment. Its 3 eyes blinked, walked 2 rounds around the Tao Tai's body, from left to right, and again from right to left. The Tao Tai's long neck turned, following Xiao Hui's body. It made a few low roars from time to time, but the hostility seemed to have lessened. Obviously, it had a favorable impression of this three-eyed spiritual monkey, just that it did not know if it was because it was rare to meet a fellow who was as gluttonous as it. That was why it viewed it in a different light. At this moment, that young man also saw Ghostly. He sat and did not move, but his expression seemed to be taken aback, obviously. He did not expect to meet Ghostly here, but he very quickly recovered, smiled, and nodded to Ghostly. The degree of shock in Ghostly's heart was not less than that young man, and right now, he was even more puzzled about this mysterious young man's identity. To be able to appear in such a dead and quiet small town, without asking this person's background, was already known. It was very strange. Xiao Hui had already neared the Tao Tai, suddenly laughed, stretched out its hand, and patted the Tao Tai's rough head. The Tao Tai made a low growl. Its four eyes stared at Xiao Hui, looking ferocious, but Xiao Hui did not seem to be afraid at all. Instead, it looked like it was amusing, patted twice with its hand again, making a strange and slightly comical sound. The Tao Tai seemed to be helpless against the monkey, snorted and like a helpless snort, crouched down and no longer bothered with Xiao Hui. Xiao Hui instead seemed to like this strange beast very much, neared the Tao Tai, and moved around here and there, looking very affectionate. That mysterious young man looked away from the two spiritual beasts, looked at Ghostly, smiled, and said, "Looks like they are not bad." Ghostly nodded his head and also smiled. That young man patted the chair beside him and said, "Actually, both of us can be considered to be fated. The heaven and earth are so big to be able to meet here. Brother, why don't you come over and sit? Let's have a drink and chat a little." Ghostly glanced at Xiao Hui and the Tao Tai who were huddled together, saw that Xiao Hui's attention seemed to be on the Tao Tai. He indifferently said, "All right." After speaking, he unhurriedly walked over but did not sit beside that young man. Instead, took another chair and sat on the other side of the table. That young man's handsome face had a faint smile. He took a clean cup and placed it in front of Ghostly and then filled it up for him, smiled and said, "Brother has come to this deserted and desolate small town. I wonder for what reason?" Ghostly did not answer, looked at the young man, in a deep voice said, "Then what is your reason?" The young man smiled and said, "I was just passing by this place and saw that there were still some leftover cups of wine here, so decided to rest here for a while and drink by myself." Ghostly turned and glanced at Xiao Hui, said, "If I say that I'm also bringing this monkey here to look for wine to drink, will you believe me?" That young man was surprised, glanced at Xiao Hui, and suddenly laughed out loud, clapped his hands and said, "Believe, why not believe? Come, 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 you and I drink a cup. Life is originally lonely. It's rare that there is a fated person at the ends of the earth in a desolate corner. Let's look for wine to drink together." After speaking, he raised his cup to Ghostly and then drained it in one gulp. Ghostly looked deeply at him. His mouth slowly repeated that sentence. "Life is originally lonely. Life is originally lonely." He suddenly also laughed out. That smile was filled with vicissitudes of life. Raised his cup and drank it in one gulp. A fiery taste of wine flowed down from his throat to his stomach. The wine in this desolate small town was actually quite powerful. That young man smiled and said, "How is it?" Ghostly looked up, stretched out his hand to take the wine pot, and added more wine for the two of them, said, "Good wine." That young man's smile deepened, slapped the table, laughed, and said, "Good. It really is good wine." In the laughter, the young man's expression gradually became excited, suddenly loudly recited, "Old times, the vicissitudes have passed. Still remember, the heartbroken person. White-haired withered lamp wandered the ends of the earth, a night of loneliness in exchange for a hangover." Reciting till the end, his voice gradually turned desolate. His face also looked somewhat desolate. After reciting, he lowered his head and did not speak. Ghostly quietly looked at him, drank the wine in his cup in one gulp. In the night, the cold wind gradually blew. Sounds of woo-woo were heard in the desolate small town, as if someone was crying quietly from afar. The night was deep, the darkness like a tide, drowning the earth. The monkey leaned on the Tao Tai and fell asleep. That ferocious beast was also lying lazily on the ground. In the inn, it was a stretch of darkness. Ghostly and that young man sat in the darkness. Neither of them had the intention to get up to look for candles. Maybe in the darkness, they seemed to feel more comfortable. For the whole day, they just sat facing each other, occasionally saying a few unimportant words, occasionally drinking a few cups of wine. But most of the time, they seemed to have evoked each other's thoughts, silently pondering, recalling the past of their lives. In such a cold night, at the ends of the earth in a desolate place, two strangers seemed to have known each other for a lifetime, indifferently interacting. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.